It is very nice to see you all here again. Let us start with our first panel of the day and third panel of the conference, titled Hopes and Disappointments in the Post-Communist Age. I would like to ask our speakers for this panel to join me here, and then, sorry? Oh. Is it on? Okay. So, do you hear me now? Okay. So, I would like to ask our speakers to join me here, and we will start now with our first speaker. This is Professor Volodymyr Turchinovsky from the Ukrainian Catholic University, who is director of the Institute for Ethics and Contemporary Issues, and he will give a talk on hope in the future, from the revolution of dignity to education of dignity. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I was truly inspired by our discussions and conversations yesterday, so let's hope that we are going to have another thoughtful and inspiring day today. In what follows, I will attempt to make a connection between the recent Ukrainian experience of the revolution of dignity and the challenges we as educators are facing in converting the moral energy of the revolution into a sustainable development of what is referred to as a free society. One of the major achievements of the revolution of dignity is this: the revolution has released the whole of Ukrainian society from any obligations entitled by its previous post-Soviet social contract. By being released from the old social contract, we have opened ourselves up for the design of a new social contract founded on the respect for human dignity and solidarity. Maidan was not only important in terms of highlighting and pointing to a direction for Ukrainian society to go, but it was also absolutely critical in helping us to elaborate a language, to describe a new vision for the country, and to meaningfully engage ourselves in a discussion of a new social contract. The revolution of dignity, in virtue of its being staged and thus lived from within by millions, has made a major contribution by letting us to make a breakthrough in unfolding a whole new dimension of communication, with the concepts such as dignity, solidarity, and sacrifice being at the very heart of it. What was so powerfully witnessed during the Maidan time was the emergence of a new modality of communication, which we might call a language of values. It was very spontaneously and beautifully born from the spirit and ethos of the solidarity of the Maidan community. The very name Revolution of Dignity aptly reflects our growing ability to communicate in a language which enables us to transcend the differences among ourselves, not by simply ignoring them, but rather by respectfully allowing them to unfold and enrich our dialogue. Maidan became a place where representatives of multiple identities, and each speaking its own voice, met and collaborated. And this is, by the way, another important lesson which I think the revolution is teaching us. If we are seriously concerned about our future, we should be bilingual, meaning we should be able to master both languages, the language of identities and language of values. When it comes to the future and the hope for the future, I'm convinced that the revolution of dignity has taught us a powerful lesson, which is well captured by saying that a free society is a moral achievement. The very same idea is profoundly and eloquently unfolded in Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks' acceptance speech as 2016 Templeton winner. I believe that this intuition should become one of the most fundamental principles when it comes to design of a new social contract of the Ukrainian people, but it certainly has a universal validity and a potential for a global application. This is why I would strongly argue in favor of education which is associated with this kind of a moral achievement and is treated as a critical player and perhaps the leading stakeholder in educating us for freedom. It should enable us and inspire us for an accomplishment which is a free society. This is by far the most important development I would like to see in the future, which, speaking as a manager, should get a priority item on our global affairs agenda. In the speech I have already mentioned, Lord Sachs reflects on the idea of outsourcing, which he thinks has profoundly defined the thinking and acting of our contemporaries. Let me continue by pondering on this, on his rich intuitions. The moment we convince ourselves that an achievement and sustainment of a free society can be outsourced as a matter of principle, we are in trouble, which might take generations to overcome. It's hugely unlikely that we can meaningfully and successfully outsource the function of sustaining liberty to something other than ourselves. The market isn't per se a source of a free society, nor is the state, nor current technology with its miraculous artificial intelligence potential, to mention the least. Generally speaking, the idea of outsourcing freedom is an extremely risky and potentially very damaging endeavor if looking from political, social, historical, and moral viewpoints. This is again where my hope with regard to the future resides. As long as we would not come up with the idea of outsourcing freedom and free society to someone or to something, but would think of it as our primary goal, worthy of educating ourselves, working creatively, and caring of others generously, we are taking the right attitude toward the future. It's true that our actual thinking, acting, doing things, making decisions, voting, raising children, running businesses and universities may not always resonate well with what we think the right attitude should be. And this is all right, because our freedom is about free men trying and failing and trying again to win their freedom. This is why Lord Sachs reminds us of the fact that a free society is a moral achievement. It's important to realize that moral achievements, unlike many other things, are not really transferable in a way that many other things and goods can be. We might own buildings, land, and all kinds of assets, which we inherited from our predecessors, but I can't think of inheriting moral achievements of my predecessors in the exactly same way. I may admire them, they might be hugely motivational and inspirational for me, I might feel proud of having some personal lineage with those who were morally great, but certainly I can't confer someone's moral achievements upon myself and become a proud owner of those qualities myself. This is why a liberal society is always a challenging goal for any given generation. And we have to go time and again through a challenge of achieving liberty or failing to do so. It's true that a previous generation or generations might provide us with social capital, which might in some important way facilitate or sadly hinder our generational effort of achieving liberty. Already established policies and procedures, patterns of political life, the quality of public square and level of trust, as well as vitality of civil society, its values and culture are hugely important instantiations of the social capital accumulated by the previous generation. Education certainly belongs to this list as by far one of the most important tools enabling, shaping, and serving our aspirations for freedom, or perhaps instead preparing and orienting us towards outsourcing mentality backed up by consumer model attitudes, or towards irresponsibility cherished by a paternalistic mindset. Every time I reread the title of my presentation today, I was reflecting on how to make a transition from the revolution of dignity to education of dignity. And my intuition was that revolution, generally speaking, is something which might set you on the right track and even push you in the right direction, but it's probably not the optimal modality for living your whole life, as well as the lives of the millions of your fellow citizens. And this is where education comes in, as much more favorable way for nourishing your activities and accomplishments. But having reached this conclusion, I asked myself as to what should be the ultimate outcome of the education of dignity, and what would be the best way to express it sufficiently, succinctly, and expressive. I think that Pope Francis, in his recent April TED Talk, provided me with an affordable answer to this question by calling for a revolution of tenderness. I immediately thought that indeed the education of dignity qualifies perfectly well for kindling a revolution of tenderness. In his TED Talk, Pope Francis expressed ideas which were which very powerfully resound with the conclusions we are drawing from the Ukrainian Revolution of Dignity. His call for a revolution of tenderness is foremost rooted in advocating for and in promoting the idea of solidarity. In his own words, quote, "How wonderful would it be if solidarity, this beautiful and at times inconvenient word, were not simply reduced to social work and became instead the default attitude in political, economic, and scientific choices, as well as in the relationships among individuals, peoples, and countries," end quote. Here is a very clear task, which those of us who work in the education might take as their own. Solidarity, says Pope Francis, should become the default attitude if we are hoping and planning for a better future. The attitudes, as we well realize, are to a large extent the offsprings of educational process. So the whole idea of education of dignity is thoughtfully unfolding itself with the Pope's emphasis on solidarity as both an internalized, he uses the word default, principle of looking at and approaching the world, and as a modality of acting and interacting with the other. Solidarity would be a useless concept and never accomplished if it would not grow out from our ability to actually see and appreciate the dignity of the other person. Thus, the Pope emphasizes that, quote, "Solidarity is not an automatic mechanism. It cannot be programmed or controlled. It is a free response born from the heart of each and everyone," end quote. Being able to respond freely is something which very profoundly articulates the essence of responsibility. Responsibility is a way of relating ourselves with the outside realities by way of making a response as free persons to challenges, values, obligations, beauty, tragedies, other people, many other things, and ultimately to God. This is why a liberal education is so crucial in the current world of so many uncertainties and so many unfulfilled hopes for a better, a more just, and a more humane life. Let me share with you a few thoughts about the Ukrainian Catholic University as an educational endeavor, which I know reasonably well and for reasonably long. If, as I indicated already, a university is ultimately geared towards the empowerment of the free persons, it's pretty evident that nothing of the sort would happen if the university itself is not built around certain values, principles, and management practices sensitive and supportive of its graduates' freedom mission. There is even more to this. It's also about the leadership style exemplified by the university leaders, and it's also about the language and concepts we use to communicate among ourselves and with the out-of-house environment, while either facing the daily routine or achieving the impossible. The UCU leadership style, which has evolved over the last 20 years, is a witness-based leadership. It's a leadership style which acknowledges the importance of interpersonal communication and willingly immerses itself in it. It's also a leadership which sees its ultimate fulfillment in serving the other to the extent that it crosses the boundaries of what is traditionally perceived as a university community and reaches out to the marginalized and martyrs. Though it would not be uncommon to think of the marginalized as those who should be helped, it would be much less conventional to think of them as the holders of some important witness for the rest of us to appreciate. Our need and quest for a witness would as much apply to the cases of martyrdom, which, however, painfully aren't something rare in the world nowadays. This is what a witness-based leadership is about. It's about discovering some new modalities of communication and leading others to explore them so that they would open themselves up for the language of witness and therefore enabled of hearing what often remains unspoken and seeing the invisible. It should not be surprising that given such a leadership model, the UCU management style is evolving around the following three concepts or principles, namely subsidiarity, sustainability, and solidarity. The first concept meaning that we treasure and trust our people's initiatives and creativeness as a basic principle of responsible performance. The second listed concept, sustainability, is about an attitude which enables you to receive the present with a gratitude and a commitment to responsibly turn it into an endowment, a gift to be received in the future. And finally, the third concept, which is solidarity, is about the way we relate ourselves as we do our university business together. It's about the modality of our communication and working together, and it's about the consistent effort of seeing another in the light of his or her dignity as we co-work and co-create. These are the principles which define and give its own character to the UCU management team, but they also play a constitutive role in shaping the university ethos in general. This is what I think is our UCU way of introducing the concept of education of dignity. Will it trigger a revolution of tenderness? Well, I think there are some good reasons not to be pessimistic about it. Thank you.
We have dedicated time for discussion after all lectures, so we will proceed to our second lecture of this panel. Assistant Professor Andrea Božikova who is the head of the Department of Political Science at the Faculty of Arts and Letters of the Catholic University in Ružomberok, will give a lecture on an awakened interest in Slovakia on the way towards a good education. So your 15 minutes.
Thank you. So dear ladies and gentlemen, as you see on this slide, I will speak today about the present education system in Slovakia. And the aim of my talk is to present you the key issues of the current debate of education in my country. Basically, I will focus on two issues. The first one is teachers' general strike, which was last year in Slovakia. And the second one is the new document named National Program of Development of Education. I will speak about education in generally and won't especially concentrate on universities, but many of what I'm going to say concern also universities. I have divided my presentation in two main sections. First, I would like to mention a key demands of teacher strike, and in a brief present you the reasons of teacher strike and main problems connected with current education system in Slovakia. In my paper, I focus on questions what and how to teach and who should teach and what salary should they get. Today, of course, because of time, I will present you the background of this question only briefly and only in general. After that, I will move on to the second part of my presentation, where I will present you the document National Program of Development of Education, and I will try to clarify what this paper suggests in connection with these questions. I would say that this document was by Ministry of Education first time published only last year, and then in extended version only in March, so only 2 months ago. And now is this document in second part of consulting process. So because of this newness, it is not possible at the moment to present you some comprehensive, some complete view on this issue, because only time will tell us if this document will help to improve our education or not. So we will see. However, this document describes the almost 70 goals which would be achieved by the state in the field of education over the next 10 years. And the current education ministry, his name is Peter Plavčan, speaks in connection with this document of the biggest reform of education what in Slovakia ever was. Okay, let's begin with the first slide, where you can see 3 main demands of teacher strike. So, as you see, higher wages, more money to be invested into education, and changes in the system of teachers' further education. As you see, teachers, among other things, have gone on strike primarily to demand higher pay and higher budget to education. I would say that, of course, this is a very important point of current debate of education in Slovakia. But of course, we cannot forget about other issues, as for example, to improve the attractiveness of the teaching profession or maintain parents and civil society attention or education issues. And maybe I was thinking that maybe also we need to support of political leaders. So let's see more details of the background of the teacher strike. What were the main reasons of teacher strike? As I indicated in previous slide, the big problem of education in Slovakia are low salaries and low social status or recognition of teachers. As you see, Slovakia spends only 4% of its GDP on education, and unfortunately, Slovak teachers are paid less than those in any other OECD country. The same situation is with social status of a teaching profession. Only 4% of teachers reported that they agree or strongly agree the teaching profession is valued in society. And of course, because of this situation, we have, on the other hand, difficulties to attract young people to the teaching profession, and on the other hand, to keep those already on the job motivated. In my paper, I will deal with these issues in more details, and in connection with that, focus on question who should teach and what salary should they get. The second question, what and how to teach, is connected with the last point, which I present you here, and this is also the big problem of education in Slovakia. Unfortunately, according OECD report in 2015, Slovak 15-year-old students performs below the international average in mathematics, reading, and science. In repeated comparison, are long placed on the worst positions. And what is alarming, the result of the year 2015 are even worse than the results of the year 2012. And according to the other study, are students in Slovak schools unhappy? So unfortunately, summing up into one sentence, we can say that Slovak children are the weakness of the knowledge and most unhappy students in EU countries. This is also a big problem, and I, in my paper, try to indicate why we have this situation in Slovakia. Briefly, I can say that it seems it is connected namely with heavy, jazzless, boring, and age-inappropriate curriculum or rigid organizational form and methods of teaching. Let's move to the second part of my presentation, and I hope that this part will be a little bit positive, and I will speak also about the hope. And let's take a look on what national program of development of education suggests to what to do with presented problems. Regarding the question what and how to teach is the key concept of this document, individualization and individual approach, because, as is mentioned in this document, each child is unique. Therefore, national program speaks about tailor-made education, and as you see, the other recommendations are that we have to have curriculum more practically, that we need to know how to assess pupils' learning outcomes, that we need to improve the supply and choice of textbooks, or we need to develop critical thinking, creativity, values, and attitudes of healthy lifestyle, and so on. Regarding the second question, national program suggests, first of all, strengthening the attractiveness of the teaching profession and making the teaching profession more attractive to talented young people. And it seems that strengthening the profession, strengthening the attractiveness of the teaching profession is the key challenge in Slovakia. And of course, it is very important how to do it. How to do it if we want to have attractive teaching profession. I think that is a very hard question because it seems that could help to increase teacher salaries or make to attract the maintain parents and civil society attention, but I'm not sure if it is enough. So other recommendations connected with these questions are, for example, to increase teachers' training in teaching students with special needs, or to improve the continuing professional development of teachers, or reduce the administrative burdens of teachers. Finally, in the last slide, you show some practical recommendation regarding also the question who should teach, but maybe also what the universities and maybe especially faculties of education can do and maybe should do for our future education and for our future teachers. So, as you see, maybe faculties of education have to educate children experts and not maybe only scientific experts. That students of pedagogical faculties need more hours of practice. That maybe faculties of education needs teachers who will teach at the same time in primary and secondary school and will bring at the universities daily real experience from the schools. Or we need more courses focused on pedagogy or psychology, and so on. So maybe at the end I can say that Slovakia is on the place when must ask what the education system and schools want to have. And we all hope that the answer will be positive, that the answer will be optimistic. But on the basis of past experiences, it can be assumed that the proposed changes will not always be easy to put into practice. But however, maybe to give up or to lose hope that we can have a better and successful schools would be a step back, and that Slovakia, if really want to continue on its path, on its way to education, I think that certainly cannot afford. So we will see, as František yesterday mentioned, that during 25 years we had 18 ministers of education. Now we have on the table new document with the vision for 10 years. And also regarding the teacher strike, there is a big big discussion about schools, but mainly about primary and secondary schools. With the universities, the situation a little bit different. There, the discussion is not so huge and not so big, but this document, National Program of Education, speaks also about universities. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your interesting lecture on the situation with the educational sector in Slovakia. Our next speaker will be Professor Gordan Čerpić, who is Vice Rector of Organization and Operations at the Catholic University of Croatia and until very recently Head of Department of Sociology. He will give a talk on attempts and failures of education reform in the post-communist age in Croatia. So,
yeah, thank you, Hrvoje. Well, first of all, yesterday I got my translation, so I was reading and trying to fix some funny sentences inside, but I was too tired during the night. And several times I woke up and tried to find what's going on with this text, and I decided to ask my dear translators to help me to speak in Croatian, because I don't want to stay somewhere lost in translation in the middle of the text. So if you could put these machines on your ears, I will try to speak slowly. What I found that I could say in English is, what I found when I was trying to prepare this presentation 6 years ago, I had I was participate some symposium at Croatian Academy of Science about the reforms of educational system. And I had presentation there, and when I read this text, I found that there is nothing to add. Nothing changed, unfortunately. So I'm going to try to say what was wrong 6 years ago and unfortunately at the moment. So I'm going to start to speak Croatian now. Zašto sve obrazovne reforme u Hrvatskoj, a bilo ih je uistinu mnogo, doživljavaju gotovo istu sudbinu? Evidentno, tu je riječ o strukturalnom problemu koji se sustavno javlja u svim pokušajima obrazovnih reformi, bez obzira na njihov sadržaj. Prije svega, držim da je ovdje problem isti onaj s kojim se susreće hrvatsko društvo i u drugim sferama društvenog života u Hrvatskoj. Naime, obrazovna reforma ne polazi od hrvatskog realiteta i nisu rađene za hrvatsko društvo. To je nedvojbeno relikt totalitarizma, i to upravo komunističkog totalitarizma, koji je postulirao idealni sustav, savršene zakone, samo eto nisu valjali ljudi pa ih je trebalo sustavno popravljati. U tu svrhu u komunističkoj totalitarnoj utopiji služili su gulagi, goli otoci. Ako se odmaknemo od tog populističkog mainstreama, onda vidimo da u Hrvatskoj nije došlo do ozbiljnog suočavanja s totalitarnim sustavom, u kojem su Hrvati živjeli gotovo pola stoljeća i da taj sustav uopće nije demontiran. Da je ostao samoživ, posebno u institucijama, na što je upozoreno već sredinom 90. godina. Jedan od glavnih promotora ove reliktne priče, prema mom dubokom uvjerenju, je hrvatski zakonodavac, koji i dalje producira idealne zakone i daje osnovni ton djelovanju ostalih hrvatskih institucija. Glavni problem koji se tu javlja jest taj da hrvatski zakonodavac uopće ne pokušava urediti realno hrvatsko društvo, postojeće, već tom društvu želi propisati kakvo ono mora biti ili pak prepisati druga zakonodavstva, ono što su neki drugi donijeli za uređenje svog društva. U svakom slučaju, ovaj ignorantski stav hrvatskog zakonodavca prema hrvatskom društvu rađa racionalnim nepovjerenjem Hrvata u institucionalni sustav, koji se već na ovoj primarnoj razini nadaje kao protudruštveni. Naravno, to producira čitav niz društvenih devijacija, od ekonomske regresije, kontinuirane korupcije, koja se sigurno neće riješiti palijativnim mjerama lova na žrtvene janjce, pa do urbanističkog kaosa, anomije, periodičke depresije i defetizma u društvu. U tom kontekstu rađaju se i propadaju hrvatske obrazovne reforme, jednako ignorirajući hrvatski realitet, kao što to čini hrvatski zakonodavac. Drugi moment koji mislim da je ovdje smisleno naznačiti, a koji je naznačila komisija Justitia et Pax Hrvatske biskupske konferencije, odnosi se na zamorenost Hrvata kontinuiranim revolucijama, prevratima i eksperimentima. Tu mislimo na izloženost smijelim društvenim eksperimentima kakvi su bili jugoslavenski, fašistički, komunistički, u novije vrijeme neokolonijalni haški, pa do smijelih eksperimentalnih reformi od privatizacije, reforme mirovinskog, zdravstvenog, socijalnog sustava s dugotrajnim lošim posljedicama po društvo, pa do eksperimentiranja s poljoprivrednim proizvodima te konačno s obrazovanjem. Mnogi od ovih sustava po prirodi stvari su inertni i traju duže od mandata pojedine vlade. Ili još bolje, kao što smo i prethodno čuli, od pojedinih ministara u vladi. Novi radikalni, revolucionarni zahvati koji ne kreću od hrvatskog realiteta, već ga postuliraju, samo stvaraju kaos u sustavu i realno mu onemogućuju razvoj. I naravno potrebnu promjenu, ali na bolje, a ne u više kaotičniji sustav. Treći moment na koji bi želio upozoriti je naznačavanje nužnosti propasti svakog reformskog zahvata u obrazovni sustav u Hrvatskoj. I to iz razloga što imamo svojevrsnu autističnost, autarhičnost hrvatskih reformatora. U odsutnosti osjećaja za opće dobro prevladavaju promocije vlastitih interesa, odnosno korporacijskih interesa klijentelističkih grupa, bile one organizirane kao stranke, udruge, firme, a kojima je zajednička svaka odsutnost osjećaja za životne prakse Hrvata. Svako rješenje koje donosi se u značajnu insuficijentnost legitimacije. Da bi odluke u demokratskom sustavu bile legitimne, ovaj je neodvojiv od sustava vrijednosti većine. Smisao je vlasti artikulirati pojedine akcente, bilo lijevim, bilo desnim, bilo liberalnim ili konzervativnim, ali ne da ignorira, dekonstruira i s njima eksperimentira, da nameće neke manjinske, pomodarske, uglavnom nedruštvene i protudruštvene sustave životnih praksi, jer takav može proizvesti samo društveni kaos, revolt, rezignaciju i anomiju. I sad par riječi o mogućim horizontima gdje bi se tu dalo nešto napraviti da evo uspije jedna reforma u Hrvatskoj. U opreci spram naznačenoga modela, ukoliko se stvarno želi provesti obuhvatna, potrebna reforma hrvatskog obrazovnog sustava, držim da treba poći od subverzivne pretpostavke, da roditelji, učitelji znaju nešto o odgoju i obrazovanju djece. I krenuti od postojeće roditeljske i učiteljske pameti. To znači da bi Vlada koja bi stvarno željela unaprijediti hrvatski obrazovni sustav trebala kao prvu aktivnost poduzeti niz ozbiljnih socioloških istraživanja o tome što učitelji, roditelji, učenici misle o sadašnjem obrazovnom sustavu, odnosno o konkretnoj praksi. Što drže da je dobro, što bi valjalo mijenjati, što misle da ne bi smjelo biti, što bi novoga trebalo ugraditi. U klimi gdje oni koji su po naravi stvari osnova reformskog procesa, učitelji i profesori, nemaju povjerenja u izvedivost projekta i sustavno ga ignoriraju, sabotiraju, protiv njega protestiraju i izvode ga minimalnim zalaganjem, nikakva reforma obrazovanja ne može biti provedena, pa bila ona zamišljena kao najbolja na svijetu. Po istoj matrici dogodit će se isto sa svakim pokušajem bilo kakve reforme, bez obzira na njenu objektivnu kvalitetu i sadržaj. Zbog toga držim da su u krivu oni koji se koncentriraju na kritiku sadržaja reforme. Ne zbog toga što njihove kritike eventualno nisu dobre, nedostatne ili su krive, već zato što su za provođenje reforme irelevantne. Obnova je moguća i mora početi od učiteljske, profesorske zajednice i uspostave iste. Uspostave dobre zbornice i ponovne suradnje, a ne sukoba učitelja i roditelja. S druge strane, potrebno je nedvojbeno, to je condicio sine qua non svake moguće reforme obrazovanja, snimiti realne reformske kapacitete pojedinih aktera reforme, na koje se kao takve računa. Tu mislim na učitelje, profesore, roditelje i učenike. Naredni moment na koji bih ovdje volio upozoriti je stvaranje konsenzusa. Već sam spomenuo da je za reformu nužan uvjet ojačati reformske kapacitete obrazovnog sustava. Na tom je tragu i stvaranje društvenog konsenzusa oko potrebe i smjera provođenja reforme. I to konsenzusa prije svega kod direktnih aktera reforme koje ona najviše tangira. Budući da je riječ o velikom sustavu, on je nužno inertan i proces njegova pokretanja je dugotrajan. On se realno ne može implementirati za mandata jedne vlade. Mora imati određeni kontinuitet. I ne može se smjer i sadržaj reforme mijenjati sa svakim ministrom ili nekim tajnikom u ministarstvu koji mijenja akcente. I na kraju, 2 minute, ovdje valja računati s potrebnim promjenama u radu hrvatskog zakonodavca. Hrvatski zakonodavac, a onda susljedne institucije koje djeluju po zakonima, produciranim od zakonodavca, moraju prestati propisivati Hrvatima vrijednosti i norme, čime se oni u velikoj mjeri bave s čudnom presumpcijom vrijednosne insuficijentnosti Hrvata. I trebaju na postojećim vrijednostima i normama realnog hrvatskog društva to društvo uređivati. Drugim riječima, potrebno je napustiti kako totalitarnu, tako i kolonijalnu baštinu. S jedne strane, gotovo magijsku, alkemijsku potragu za idealnim, najboljim obrazovnim sustavom na svijetu, te s druge strane, manično prepisivanje modela nastalih u drugim društvima za potrebe uređenja njihova sustava. Valja se osloniti na ono što imamo u vrijednosnom smislu i u životnim praksama. Te kad se stvore ove pretpostavke, dakle oslanjanje na učiteljsku, roditeljsku pamet, na postojeći vrijednosti sustav, sustavno istraživanje toga sustava, pojačanje reformskog kapaciteta sustava, netotalitarni i nekolonijalni pristup zakonodavca, te stvaranje konsenzusa u potrebi reforme, tek tu dolazimo u horizont u kojem je smisleno raspravljati o samom sadržaju reforme. Želimo li uistinu reformu, a ova svakako treba, moramo ostvariti dakle, neke predreformske pretpostavke. I kao sudionik pokušaja dviju hrvatskih reformi obrazovnog sustava, ja sam uvjeren da bez njih u novu reformu i ne treba ulaziti, jer drugim osim štete ona ne može polučiti ništa. Well, that I was said 6 years ago. And at the moment we have reform and reforms failure as well, and will fail as all other reforms, unfortunately, before it. My colleague Diana Vitsan, yesterday she was here. She is rector of Zadar University, and she is on the top of the team which want to save this reform. I have a good hope and wish, but I'm a believer. I'm not a superstitious person, so I don't believe that will success. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for your lecture. Hopefully all the pessimistic aspects will not hold in the future. This, after all, is a conference on hope in the future. Let us now turn to our last lecture of this panel. Professor Slavomir Novosad, who is a Dean of the Faculty of Theology at the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin, will give a talk titled "Communism is Gone, but the debate about man continues." So the floor is yours.
At least we believe so, that communism is gone. We have good reasons to believe so, but on the other hand, well, yes, there's hope in the title of the conference. In the title of my presentation or short talk, there's communism, there's man, human being, debate, but something else is missing, I believe. When we talk about hope, we, as those who believe in God, we should mention God above all. And I myself, as a theologian, should keep it in mind always. We place our hope in God, and because of God, we have hope. That's the whole idea. We do need to understand better our, let's say, the so-called communist past, to create better future, especially for our young people that come to our universities to be well educated. But what we need above all as Catholics and Christians is God himself. We should always keep in mind what John Paul II put in the title of his very important, in some way perhaps I believe forgotten, Constitution on the Catholic Universities, Ex Cor de Ecclesia, 1990, 27 years ago published. What he put there was that the university, Catholic University, comes or is born from the heart of the Church, ex cor de Ecclesia. If we sometimes have problems, what we are to do as Catholic leaders, as Catholic universities and so on, we should perhaps come back to what matters above all. What's our environment, fundamental environment or root of our existence is the Church. If we know what the Church is for, we will know what we are for, and so on. Anyway, communism is gone, let's believe it is. But the debate about man continues. One quote, not the last one this time, that comes from Pope Benedict XVI. It's about the vocation of the university, any university. The vocation of the university has always been the search for truth. University was born of the search for the truth, for the, let's add, the whole truth, for the whole truth of our existence. And here comes, when we speak about truth, we, as those who believe in God, believe that God is truth. That's what we believe. If so, what comes here now is the question of God. Another quote from Pope Benedict when he met the community of Sacro Cuore, Catholic University of Milan, in 2011. He put it that way: the question of the truth and the absolute, the question of God, is not an abstract investigation divorced from daily life, but it is the crucial question on which the discovery of the meaning of the world and of life depends. Now, there are three parts in my short talk, I hope. short talk. The first is about anthropological error. The second will be about the so-called new cultural model of man, of the human being. And the third, a little bit about what we call integral anthropology, integral understanding of the human person. Now the first part, I come back here only briefly to Poland. That was in 1997 that John Paul, when he visited Poland, in Krakow, he met the so-called academic intellectual elites of Poland. And when speaking to those people coming from all our universities, he put it that way: communism, Marxist ideology, whatever, is gone, but the debate about man is not gone, but continues. I believe it was one of the major, perhaps most favorite, of the themes that bothered John Paul II even before he became Pope. When he was, as you probably know, he was teaching at our university for 24 years before he became Pope. He was teaching philosophy, or moral philosophy. And when we come back to the titles of his lectures, some of his lectures have been preserved, or the books that he published in those days, in the late 50s, early 60s, and early 70s, it was very often about the human being, about man, who man is the human being, who am I as a man or a woman. In 1991, as a Pope, John Paul published one of the so-called social encyclicals. The title was and is Centesimus Annus. A part of that encyclical he devoted to what just happened in our part of the world, Central and Eastern Europe, the fall of communism. And you may perhaps remember that there was a broad wave of discussions and debates across the world. Why communism failed? What was wrong with that idea or Marxist ideology that promised so much, but in fact produced totalitarian countries and millions of lives lost? John Paul II, in some way or another, joined that discussion, or those discussions. And in the paragraph number 13 in that document, Centesimus Annus, he put it more or less that way. The fundamental error of socialism is anthropological in nature. Socialism considers the individual person simply as an element, as a molecule within the social organism. So the good of the individual is completely subordinated to the functioning of the social economic mechanism. In communism, there is no space for the human person. Human person, human being, man, woman, is just an element in the whole big organism, social organism. Communism then was basically mistaken in its fundamentals, precisely in anthropology. John Paul would come back to that idea many times later, but let's leave it like this. It's about anthropological error. Just before declaring to resign from his office, Pope Benedict XVI, that was in February 2013, a few days before Christmas 2012, Pope Benedict made a speech. It was a long speech to the so-called Roman Curia. It's a custom that all popes just before Christmas summarize the year that is coming to an end. And in that long, important speech, he, above other things, or beside other things, he said something like this. He spoke how the very concept of the human person is now being changed, questioning that which is human in the human being. He said the very notion of being, of what being human really means is being called into question. He quoted the so-called gender ideology and spoke about that. And he said that gender ideology is a new philosophy of sexuality. Sex is no longer a given element of nature that man has to accept and personally make sense of it. It is rather a social role that we choose for ourselves, while in the past it was chosen for us by society. The profound falsehood, as Pope Benedict put it, of this theory and of this anthropological revolution contained within it is obvious. People dispute the idea that they have a nature given by their bodily identity that serves as a defining element of the human being. They deny their nature and decide that it is not something previously given to them, but that they make it for themselves. Thus we come from the anthropological era, we move to anthropological revolution. The problem is growing. Now, all that we could perhaps define as the so-called anthropological transformation. And that anthropological transformation, present in the world for the last 3-4 decades perhaps, has created something that has come to be called a new cultural concept of man, or a new man, if you like. There are at least a few distinctive features of that new man, new cultural model of man. Those are, just to mention them, radical individualism and subjectivism. Man is closed in upon himself. Man regards himself as a center of everything. He rejects traditional norms or models of life as being imposed on him, and then nothing is obligatory. He himself chooses what to do and what to choose, what is good and what is bad, what's right and what's wrong. The second feature is the so-called religious indifference. The new man no longer needs God or religion. Thus, in his inner life, a void is felt, emptiness after God. Man lives, as often popes do and say, as if God did not exist. There are several forms of that religious indifference. One is softer than another is hard, but let's leave it. Anyway, in one way or another, that leads to one or another form of atheism, of removing God from man's life. The third feature is nomadism. Man is constantly seeking new sensations, impressions, experiences. He's never satisfied. He's always on the move. He is like a nomad, moving from one idea to another, one religion to another, one cult to another. The fourth feature is naturalism. Man is a completely natural creature, natural being. It may have some forms, but in one way or another, that naturalism is a negation of the spirit. There's no spirit in the human being. Man belongs only to this world. Man is made, let's say, of no longer body and soul, but body and brain. That's the idea they put it. And the fifth feature is the idea that man is totally addicted to the mass media, entirely dependent upon the mass media. Modern mass media, as we know, are ever more all-embracing, invasive, we may put it that way. And man is no longer capable of thinking or speaking independently. Another idea we should mention, perhaps just one word, and that's transhumanism. It's another idea that is just being, well, very much present in our culture. Transhumanism is understood as a philosophy or ideology, a current of thought, based on a conviction that human being can be enhanced using technological means. Human beings are perceived as a transitional species in human history, leading to the so-called post-human future. What does that mean, being post-human? What is being used already is a term like, for instance, post-persons. We are going to have post-persons in the near future. That's the whole idea of the transhumanism. And now, a few words about what we should keep in mind, I understand, as those who believe in God, as those who are Catholic leaders or being in charge of Catholic universities, and that is the so-called integral understanding of the human person. And Marxist idea, all other ideas are the so-called reductionist or reduced concepts of the human being. What God is fond of, in a way, is the term integral. And the idea that the church preaches is the integral idea of the human person, integral anthropology. And the major features, distinctive features of that integral anthropology perhaps are those. Unity of the person. Man was created by God in unity of body and soul, corpora et anima unus, as we say in Latin. The second feature is openness to transcendence and uniqueness of the human person, transcendence to the dimensions that go beyond this world. The third feature is freedom of the person, which is real but not unlimited. The fourth feature is the equal dignity of all men and women. And the fifth feature is the social nature of the person. That's the nature of the person, that we are social beings. The basic conviction is that man is a creature created by God, who is creator. Now, to summarize, or to conclude, I would say we are blessed being Catholic universities, because through faith we have access to the light that comes from above. So we can better understand, we can fully understand the world, ourselves, and above all, God himself. It's only in the light of God that we can understand who we are, where we come from, and where we are going to. So it would be perhaps good to quote just one sentence from paragraph 22 from Gaudium et Spes, which is Vatican II Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World. It's put there that it says that it's only in the light of the incarnate Word is Jesus Christ, God made man, that the mystery of human life becomes clear. When we are looking for a better future for our especially young people who come to our universities, what is essential is we should help them come and believe, see the incarnate Word, God who became man and has stayed with us. So we know who we are, so they know who they are and where they are going. Thank you.
I would like to thank all our speakers on their specific insights and thought-provoking ideas. And now we have up to 45 minutes for discussion. So are there any questions from the audience, or if some of the speakers would like to comment on other lectures so that we start in building integrity of all these lectures together, I mean, as an integral section. So, any questions?
I have many questions, but for the moment only 3. And to Andrea, if I may ask, I'm really interested to know how big is the salary of teacher? Because you were talking about increasing the salary, but what's the real salary of a teacher? Secondly, I don't know if I am wrong, but you said that 4.4% of BGP is going GDP is going for education?
That's what she said.
Yes.
4%. That's what she said.
4.4 is.
Very little.
No. No, it's
Different.
All education. What you're referring to is percentage of GDP for research, which is different figure. It's a completely different figure. This is overall expense on education.
In education. But in any case, in Croatia, general is 1.7. No, something different. Sorry, I'm wrong. That's for research. Okay.
Small, but
are you sure? No. I think it's not important issue. But in any case, I think that in Croatia, only 1.7 of BGP in total is destinated to education. That's what I think so. But in any case, that's not so important. And the third question, which is for me, I would say it's very interesting. In Croatia, we have impression that Slovakia is going very well in economical development. Like Slovakia, at least in Croatian media, is presented as one country that was not so hardly hurt by this economic crisis. Croatia, we were down, we are still down. Unemployment rate, youth unemployment rate, and so on. But always we are talking that educational structure and economical growth are somehow related. And now when I hear you saying, for example, that Slovakia's students, 15 years, they are not happy with what is going on in school systems, or that they are so low in all this international research. So how do you, I'm not sure how is possible, how do you see that? Is it that they're doing just manual work, or what's going on? Or I'm wrong talking about Slovakia economic growth? Other questions for other,
After lunch.
After that. Not even before. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for questions. So if I'm not wrong, the average teacher makes 997 per month in brutto. Euro. Yes.
1,000. It's almost
Okay.
1,000.
So in netto, it depends, but it's around 700. Okay, so this is the number. But you know, the problem is also that the salary is low for teachers, beginning teachers, and then also when someone teach all life, at the end of the life, the salary is still very, very low. So the old teachers, this is also problem. So the number is this one. The second one, the question about GDP. I'm not good in numbers, but I have here another information that average of OECD country is 6.1%. So in Slovakia it's not more, but it's less. Okay. And the last question about economical development. Yes, it's true that Slovakia after fall of communism was on good way, and the economical development was good and so on. But maybe the problem is that we have many schools, many teachers, that the system so economical development and grow is okay, but it's not enough for so many schools and so many universities. and so many teachers. Maybe, for example, we spoke with František today that maybe interesting question is how many universities you have in your countries. So, for example, in Slovakia we have 23 universities. The Catholic University, yes, the Catholic, not only state university, but mainly state universities. We are only one Catholic university, and there are some small number of private universities. But in generally, we have mainly state universities, and the number is 23 universities. So it's a big number. So maybe this is the problem, and this is also the discuss in Slovakia. If we need, and maybe it's true that we have to delete some schools, but you know it's a hard question because nobody want to do it because it's about the people, it's about the children and students and so on. So I don't know, maybe how many universities do you have in Croatia?
Croatia, we have actually 10 universities. Okay, Slovakia is about 5.5 people, 5 million, we are 4.2, let's say, 4.3. We have 10 universities, and there are 8 state universities, and let's say 2 private, among them Catholic university, but we are really small. But yeah, I know that's difference, but maybe, I don't know which system is better or not. What am I saying, generally speaking, is that big discussion is Croatia about the reform of the school system is saying, in order to have economic growth, we have to change our school system because it's not good. But we were talking yesterday, one of the major issues is like creating job, economical reasons. So that's one. For me as a priest, it's not more important and so on. But in any case, it's take. I would presume that Slovakia growing so, let's say, faster than other ex-communist countries, that Slovakia has better schooling system. That's not how it's, I would say, because we are always saying, maybe František, economical growth is related to schooling system, because if you don't have very well educated people, you cannot have economical growth. But now I see you at least say that you have bad school system, but you grow economically.
You are right, we are growing economically. That's true. And the situation is not bad as is presented maybe. But maybe one other point is it was said also yesterday, the problem is not money. The problem is also distribution of budget. The priorities of government and society, they put into society where to distribute and how to distribute this richness of economical results. Because there is a part of healthcare which is demanding, social care which is also demanding because there is aging, still more and more people with old age, etc. So there is a big debate also how the justice or just way how to distribute money which are get by government, taxes, etc. But I'm agree, and there is also future and hoping for the future. There is big hope in this new national educational program now issued by our current minister. Of course, there is a debate if it's good, it is bad, or what it's better or worse. It's always, but the courage of this minister is he invited many experts. He opened many committees, created new committees and advisors. Help me to prepare a national educational program. So we do hope that there is future also for Slovakia to promote, to implement really national educational program with the hope to be implemented in the future 10 or 15 years.
And maybe other reason why we are optimistic is that it seems that something is going in society. That last year was big teachers' general strike. Last month was the big students' demonstrations, not about education, but about corruption and so on. So it seems that something is happened, is going in Slovak society, and this is good. That one what Kinga told yesterday, that we have to relearn, say something, and it seems that in Slovakia something happened with this, and this is good. That students are more active there, and this is the hope of our society. But you know, we will see. But and very important is the politicians. If we have from this part, you know, some positive.
So we have another question, Mr. Banac. Okay, we have time, not a problem, okay.
I would just like to add some comment, because I was lucky to have 2 Slovak students last year in my lab, and they were very, very good. Very good background, interesting in science, very good results. So I think the education is not bad at all. So they show enthusiasm and very good science. So we go to this way together.
Okay, Professor Banac, and Professor Banac here, and then we have a question over there.
I would like to ask Father Novosad if he could share with us.
Another microphone.
Here's the other one.
Okay, I said I would like to ask Father Novosad if he would share with us some experiences from Poland about controversies that undoubtedly arise with the advent of these new ideologies, particularly in the academic setting. Is this stirring up public debates and so on and so on?
Ideologies that I just mentioned, like perhaps transhumanism. Well, the last thing that I mentioned in that, the so-called new cultural model of man, transhumanism is not very much present, I believe. There are some texts being published recently about that. And there is some fear what's coming when more and more people in the world, but particularly in the West, in America, there is something that is called the University of Singularity, which is based somewhere in Western America, I believe in California, where that's their program of the university. We are going to another stage of humanity, transhumanism. We're going to cross this, or to leave this stage of our evolution, as they say, human evolution, and enter into a new stage, which is going to be called, or is already called, transhuman or post-human stage of evolution. This is not very much present, I would say, in Poland. However, what I said in the beginning about the so-called the debate about man, that John Paul II put it that way, that the debate about man continues, and that is very much present. Even in academic circles as well. I remember once or twice, when a few years ago I was vice rector of our university, and I had an opportunity to meet rectors from all other universities in Poland. Altogether we have universities or institutions, public institutions of higher education, we have about 132 in Poland. And I remember meeting those rectors, and there were some kind of discussions perhaps about this or that. And I did feel, I asked that question yesterday, that they were expecting something from me coming from a Catholic university, particularly about values, what we mentioned yesterday, but also about something that we could call integral anthropology. Who we are, what is the university for, any university? Just for is it a vocational high school, whatever, college? Is it something that is to serve economy? That's the mentality that is widespread, I believe, now. Or perhaps we shouldn't leave, or shouldn't remove, shouldn't forget the idea that is very much present, that idea of truth. What's the truth about the human being? Who am I? And so on. But, on the other hand, in some way they would expect us, perhaps, to say something about that, to point out to some new arguments or claims that should be important, that shouldn't be forgotten. But on the other hand, I remember one example, I think it was in Gdańsk, that I once went there. There were about 100 rectors from all across the country. And there was a problem because the Minister of Education, not of higher education, but Minister of Education, has asked all the universities about her problems. It was a woman, and she had a problem because she said that among the so-called optional subjects for those who are graduating from secondary schools, there were some that she said were not very interesting to our students because very few pupils, secondary school pupils, would choose them for their final exams in secondary schools. And there were 5 subjects that she suggested should be removed from the list of subjects to choose. One of the subjects was theory of dance, of dancing, for instance. There were about 50 pupils in Poland who would take that annually for their exam. But there was also among those 5, there was also philosophy and Latin. And I think she mentioned about 3,000 students, pupils, that would choose those subjects as their subjects for final exams. And the minister said, you know, we have to pay a lot of money to prepare all the documentation for every subject. So from the financial point of view, there's no point to keep those subjects on the list of subjects, optional subjects for our pupils. And then there was a vote among all those 100 rectors because the minister wanted an opinion from the rectors of the universities. About, if I remember well, 4 or 5 rectors were in favor of keeping those subjects, particularly Latin or philosophy, regarded as important subjects or ideas for our culture, anything. 90-something of them were in favor of removing for financial reasons. That's the mentality of university rectors in our part of the world. And that says something about, well, anthropology, yes, understanding human being and so on. So, in many ways, even if formally we can put it that way, the communism is gone. It's long gone, it's almost 30 years. But on the other hand, the mentality, the way of thinking, also in our academia, in our academic circles, is still very much present. Perhaps not so much for any Marxist reasons, if I may put it that way, but more for something that we could call secular reasons. That's the way people now, universities, rectors, leaders of society, intellectuals, perceive society, social life, human being, and so on, and so on. That's a serious problem, I believe, very much so in Poland as well. And that's the mission for us, in a way, perhaps, for Catholic universities, what to do with it.
So, next question, Professor Dorko.
I also have a question to Slavomir. Could you share with us some experiences or know how the Catholic University of Lublin communicates the Christian vision of the human person, how it translates it into university life in different ways, how you do it, especially in those areas like, you know, technical sciences or, you know, applied sciences, natural sciences, and to non-Catholics and non-Christians. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Well, as you probably know, in Poland, about 95 or 96% of the population regard themselves as Catholics. So there are very, very few non-Catholics in Poland. There are some Orthodox in the very east of the country and some fewer Protestants in the very west of the country. There are some who would regard themselves as non-believers at all, but not so many of them. So we do not have too many, if I may put it that way, non-believers at our university. That's one thing. Another is that I believe, well, on the fundamental level, it's one of the reasons why the Catholic University should have faculty of theology, faculty of good philosophy, classical philosophy, if Martin would put it that way, but also theology, because it helps to understand what are the basics, yes, of anything, of life. On the other hand, I believe that if we have our faculty of theology is the strongest in Poland. The faculty, we have about 90, I believe 91 professors, extraordinary, ordinary professors, just at our faculty. About 142 persons are employed, are teaching at our university. We have a very good offer of doctoral studies, the best in Poland, perhaps around, with about 14 or 15 specializations of different subjects in theological area. And what we try to do is to share with all our students, whatever their convictions or their faith or there's no faith, is that we have the so-called university courses. There are 5 of them. And every student studying whatever is supposed to take these courses and then to have an exam, to pass an exam. These are, I believe, one is fundamentals of logic, outline of the history of philosophy, the Bible in culture, fundamental ethics, and fundamental or selected issues of the social teaching of the church. There are 5 of them. So that's one of the ways that we want to share our Catholic Christian convictions with all our students. It's also important, I believe, to do it in one way or another, that our faculty, that those who teach at the university, at least understand Christian convictions. Of course, most of our faculty are Catholics. We believe so. Probably most of them practicing Catholics, I don't know. Anyway, it's important what John Paul put in that pastoral constitution on Catholic universities. He said that at least half of the faculty at Catholic university should be Catholic. Of course, the situation, let's say, in America is different, in Western Europe is different in regards of students, their faith and so on. But in our university, we believe that our professors, teachers, younger, older, all of them, should bear some kind of witness of their Catholic convictions and share them with their students as well. So what's also important is not just what students study, what they hear from their professors, but also what they see when they meet their professors, when they mix with them, when they, well, communicate with them also outside of classrooms and so on. Always important is what we call academic or university ministry. We have always had, as our university chaplains for many years, Jesuits. It's quite strange. We have them, we are happy with them. But on the other hand, no university professor at our university is a Jesuit. There are no Jesuits as teachers at our university, not at all. There used to be 1 or 2 years ago. But we have Jesuits as university chaplains. Why, I really don't know. But that's the case at our university. Of course, whenever we have some celebrations at the university, we very often ask, for instance, our local bishop, who is Grand Chancellor of the university, to come and speak to our students or to our community to say Holy Mass before the celebrations start. In the university, we have the university church, the very middle of the campus, of our campus. So these are perhaps the ways that we try to share with all those who come to study with us what we think is important on the fundamental level in terms of faith and so on.
Okay, so we've had here, okay, one question over there, Professor Đurković.
Jasna Nimac, Croatian Catholic University. Thank you for all of your presentations. I really enjoy them all, but I have a question for Professor Andrea Božekova. Okay. I was prompted by what you said about teaching professor rated as one among the less attractive professions in Slovakia. And I think that the situation here is pretty much similar. And I don't share this opinion, but it's a kind of a logic if you think that it is one amongst the most stressful profession as well, isn't it? And I'm interested, what do you think, what is the root cause of that problem? A root cause, like origin of that attitude, of that opinion? If we think, do you think that, for example, our, the fact that still we are using traditional methods in teaching has to do with that? If we think, for example, that a world has changed and the way we gather information has changed tremendously. For example, today's children, they are most brand-driven and advertised than ever. They are multitasking with media, for example, using at once more than one media. They on average spend about 6 or 7 hours in front of different media. So the way of gathering information is totally changed, and we have to compete with such a powerful tool, I would say. And for example, a couple of years ago, I was teaching the course Ethics of Literature, and I was kind of taken aback when I've noticed that some of students, when we had to discuss the seminars, they even didn't read the novels. They just download the summarized versions of the novels. So it's, yeah, this is my question. I agree what you said, that we as the professors have to be also the charge experts, and we have to have in mind all these facts, I think so. So my question is how we can compete with such way of teaching, of gathering information. Thank you.
You know, first of all, maybe I want to say that also I was a teacher at the secondary schools 6 years ago. And if I remember on that time, it was very hard. It was very hard. Because, yes, on the one hand, it was my choice how I want to teach, for example, and if I will use the internet or multimedias and so on. But on the other hand, if I want to do something, for example, that we haven't PC in our schools. If I want to do something with PC, I have to bring my own PC. If I want to do something more with students, for example, if I need to use color paper, I have to buy by myself this paper. So, and I am not sure if this is change in Slovakia at the moment. Maybe yes, but you know, I was at the secondary school 6 or 7 years ago. This semester we organized at our department one competition for students, and also teachers come to this competition, and we had discussion with these teachers, and we saw that only a little bit was changed, that the life on the especially primary and secondary schools are it's very hard to be a teacher. And the second question, that you don't agree that we have to be an expert. You agree? Okay. How to do it? Okay. You know, I think that, and you began with that teaching profession is maybe about the stress, but I think that also that the stress or not comfortable position is also about that the teacher don't have PC, don't have paper, and so on. But if we want to be an innovative teacher or be experts for teacher, also the first thing is that we need to love our profession. But if we want to do something more with children and with pupils and with students, we need some background. And I think that the background is also the good salary, normal salary, that teachers can go 1 per year on holiday. It's not usually that teachers can go on holiday because they don't money. Usually is that our teachers have to have 2 works, especially teachers from secondary schools. During maybe one story, when was the teacher strike in Slovakia, we organized on our faculty discussion with the teachers from primary and secondary schools. And there was also one father, and he told us this story, and he said, I have a little girl, the first year pupil, and she loves her teacher and she loves her school. And one day we went to the store Tesco, and he said, and we met there her teacher, her first teacher. But she didn't do shopping there. She worked there. And he continued, and my little girl asked me, Father, why my teacher works in Tesco? And he told us, I didn't have a heart to explain the situation to my little girl and maybe destroy the picture about her teacher. And he finished, and that was the point when I decided to involved in teacher strike and support teachers. So I think that discussion about education is huge. I'm not expert. I'm not a dean or rector or something. I'm only a teacher, and this is also my presentation was maybe a little bit practical, but you know, so I want to have hope, and mainly because of it seems that something going on society. But we need also the support from government, you know.
Okay, thank you. So, we have questions, 2 questions, you and then Rektor Tanjić.
I have a question to Professor Turczynovsky. You told us Maidan and the Revolution of Dignity is very important, it's basic for the process of the education in Ukraine. I would like to know a little more about Christian reasons of this revolution, the presence of God and Christian values in the Revolution of Dignity.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And I mean, there probably could be a longer answer to this, but I think that it's interesting how naturally I think the religious experiences and values became part of what was going on in Kyiv at Maidan and throughout the whole revolution. So it was certainly not kind of driven by Christian churches, so to speak, but somehow the very experience and the fact that people really, as I mentioned, experienced that sense of kind of solidarity and support. And I think that the cause and understanding that they stay for the cause which is just all of them together, coming from different backgrounds and from different parts, even geographically, of Ukraine, that put them in the situation when there was a very, I would say, good and authentic experience of things like solidarity and friendship and openness to the other person. And somehow that created a space and platform where certain religious experiences would kind of come in. And so people would kind of live what you refer to as a kind of transcendent experience of something which is beyond the just myself, which kind of is that transcendent. And many people they kind of opened themselves up to that kind of religious life and experience. There was also a time when very many priests and churches were present during the actual kind of events, and the religious celebrations were taking place. And I think that many people could have been, for the first time for them when they decided to join that prayer. And so this wouldn't be kind of unusual, totally. So I think that all we now have to do is somehow to use and take advantage of this kind of very profound, if you wish, moral energy or religious experiences which we had, and somehow just kind of build on that when it comes to the churches. And that's the challenge that we are facing. So that's the major. So again, if kind of to summarize, I think that we are kind of facing a challenge now, an opportunity to transform that spirit and energy of Maidan and revolution into new ways and new models of thinking, acting when it comes to the church, also when it comes to education. That was a kind of very powerful experience which I think our universities have to think how you can kind of build on this and build it in your educational spaces and programs. And also politically, that's probably one of the major challenges we are facing now, how to convert that moral energy of Maidan into certain political tools and instruments. It seems that the people have a very clear statement and message with regard to the values and the kind of principles they would like to build their country upon. Now, sadly, we don't have any kind of appropriate political instrument or tools in terms of parties, for example, or a party, which would be able to convert that. So this is I think, my experience, and this is where we have the richness of Maidan, which we should somehow find ways to convert, to transfer, and to enable ourselves to move forward when it comes to the church life, religious life, when it comes to education, and when it comes to political domain. So that's what we are kind of working on. And I think that the university, Ukrainian Catholic University, is kind of pretty much conscious about this goal and challenge.
Thank you. So there was another question here.
My question is related to the previous one. Maybe you already answered, Volodymyr. It's also, I would say, interesting and important for us to see how the situation in Ukraine is developing. How do you judge the current situation? Not only talking about education, but general politically now, a little bit related to educational system too. And how do you see the role of Catholic University level, Ukrainian Catholic University in all these matters? Because I know that you are very involved in a positive way, and that's also one of the reasons why the Ukrainian Catholic University gained also, I would say, a certain prestige.
Yeah, let me begin to answer this by kind of trying to summarize the role of the university. And again, I think that what you, Father Slavomir Novosad, mentioned about the kind of Christian values and Christian spirit and Christian witness, I think that we are kind of trying somehow kind of to work along these lines. And this is why I'm thinking that we are kind of trying to develop a certain kind of leadership which is based on witness. I think this is a way for us to channel and share the depth of Christian life and values by witnessing. I think this is something which we would be very eager to move forward and to develop. That's the modality of the university life. I mean, the way it's not educating others and having classes on Christianity is important, but somehow being able to become a witness of Christ, for that matter. That's it. While you're teaching biology or IT or many other things, or the way you run your managerial meetings, for example. I mean, that idea of leading by witnessing, I think this is like a modality which we are kind of trying to develop and build at the university. And to the extent that we are making progress in that, or kind of or are succeeding in kind of designing that leadership model, I think this is something which might be well perceived, also because of its kind of authenticity by other universities, by other people. And I think that that's the role that this university could play by kind of by being authentic in its Christianity. So that's the way we are kind of thinking of promoting. And apart from the academic excellence, which is also an important goal, but somehow just to have a university for the sake of academic excellence isn't that appealing to me personally, but also I think to my colleagues. So somehow striving for academic excellence got to have some kind of justification or goal beyond that. And I think that what kind of fits for that is that a new modality of communication. And we are also trying to develop a language which would kind of enable us to convey that kind of witness model. It's not necessarily about kind of new words, but somehow kind of new meanings and new senses with which you kind of support and unfold that idea of leadership by witness or through witnessing. I think that I think there are many kind of positive things which we see in Ukraine, and in many regards, ironically, you might say that Putin, with his aggression, he kind of helped and worked towards the greater unity of the country. And this is why I was kind of saying that one of the real experiences which I have from Maidan is that kind of modality of language, of values which we are beginning to speak when it comes to Ukrainian society. We used to be more inclined to speak language of identity, so to speak, West against East, and Orthodox people against Catholics, for example, or those who lived half of their life in the Soviet Union versus those people who were born into New Ukraine. So, I mean, that kind of language of identity was probably dominant language. And so there were many languages of identity, so to speak. But I think that Maidan has helped to develop that sense of, it helped to shape our hierarchy of values, basically. And so if you put the dignity high enough, it helps you somehow to communicate when it comes to identities or languages or different kind of historical patterns. It's all getting more ordered, and this is why I'm thinking that language of values is really kind of a very critical moment, not to annihilate the language of identities, because we are, by God, we are kind of, we are born into a very specific time, into a very specific culture. We have our parents, so there is, it's a great gift to have the sense of your own kind of identity and to be able to accept that identity as a special calling and a special gift. But somehow to be able to communicate, you really have to develop the sense and sensibility for language of values, if that kind of makes sense. So that's the positive, I think, development which we are somehow kind of seeing throughout the country. And there is unprecedented volunteer movement, again, which is like booming in the country, which I think is very well. So basically, I think civil society is very vital. It helped to build the army it helped to organize and support the revolution, and that volunteer civic society movement is still kind of going on. The main challenge, as I said, is that there is no there is no political tool or instrument or a party which would help somehow to convey and to move forward and to make those transformations faster. Corruption itself remains kind of a huge challenge, and that's the Ukrainian paradox that we have had two revolutions which were clearly value-based. At the same time, the system and the systems are still kind of essentially corrupt, and there is need a lot of effort to change or transform them. I think war, which we have, is certainly one of the major challenges for Ukraine now, and it's going to be a challenge also for in the future. And there is not any clear kind of understanding as to how we should be kind of dealing with that, facing all other problems which we have, whether economically or on the level of reforms. So that's the kind of the, roughly speaking, the situation which we have. So to summarize, I think we're kind of moving forward, but it's very kind of painful. It's very difficult to really make those kind of steps forward.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, let us thank our speakers once again for this. Lunchtime, right?
It's lunchtime, you know where it is.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Join us. Thank you for coming. We will introduce you later on. Now we have free time. It's about we're planning at 2 p.m. Okay, we have enough time talking, stay together. Our Hungarian friends have already do baby.
It's a sin.
Soon after lunch. I'm so sorry that I'm not here. But I have a proposal. Maybe you want to do that after lunch at 1, let's say, we have time. If somebody wants to see our new building, if somebody is interested to see what is going on there, a quick tour I can provide just for those. I'm going to announce that. Okay. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to our final panel, our distinguished panel. I think that our discussions and panels over the last day and a half have been absolutely fantastic, and we're now prepared to hear some new reflections, but also some reflections in wrapping up some of the themes of the conference thus far. A couple of things have stood out to me, which I'll mention very quickly. And one is this idea that the Catholic University provides added value, that both for its students but also for society, the Catholic University provides something, and we're discussing what that is, trying to determine what that is, that can't be offered at a secular university. So the challenge is to figure out, well, what exactly is that? And secondly, this theme of hope. In the last week of my class, a week ago, I talked with my students about hope, the concept of hope, because we studied all kinds of scary manifestations of totalitarianism in the 20th century. And I wanted to end with hope. And as I emphasized to them, hope is not optimism. Hope is not the certainty that things will get better. It's something quite different. And this theme, too, has entered into our discussions. So we have 3, 4, 5 distinguished panelists here to speak to us. I want to just go around, in case you haven't met them all, to introduce them. I suspect you already know the panelists to the far left. Then I'd like to introduce Vasha Farditsa. Vasha is the new rector. You're a theologian, is that correct?
Yes.
And the new rector of the Catholic University of Georgia, a new member of our group who has special insights to provide to us. We also have Professor Viacheslav Briukhovetsky here, who is the honorary president of the National University, Kyiv-Mohyla University or Academy in Ukraine. Viacheslav played a very important role in the Ukrainian independence movement, and then also in the Orange Revolution and the Maidan Revolution. And then we have my good friend Peter Stasny. Peter kindly agreed to take part. We just saw each other a week ago, exactly a week ago in South Bend, and suddenly he's back in Europe and drove 4 hours from Slovakia to be with us.
You keep me busy.
Yeah, well, of course this is a busy project we have going. And Peter was an MP in the European Parliament for 10 years and has played a very prominent role in providing a moral voice in Slovakia. And finally,
In Slovak Maidan.
In Slovak
we
Maidan,
also had our
in
fight,
particular.
our wrestling there.
Yeah, Peter.
Dangerous than Ukraine, but.
Peter has a way of speaking what's exactly on his mind, and that's something we all admire. And also an international reputation as a professional athlete. And finally, we have Ivo Banac, whom all of us have already met, who will conclude this panel. So I'd like to start with our host and organizers.
Thank you, Jim, once again. I'm so glad to see all of you here at Catholic University of Croatia, and I'm so happy that we are hosting this prominent conference. So we are some 5 here on this panel, and I spoke already several times. I really tried to be very concise and to say a few words about one topic. There are many topics that we were addressing, but there are some topics that we didn't talk about, many of them, but I will mention one. Is for the hope in the future. I think our students, they were all born after the communist time. And sometimes they are asking themselves, why are we talking about it? First of all, we should find a way how to explain them what was going on in this time, not only from the historical point of view or even from scientific point of view, but also from emotional, psychological, and spiritual way. What did happened at that time, what it means, and what it meant to be part of this communist mentality, and how to overcome it. Sometimes I think that we miss that also at our Catholic universities in Eastern Europe, that we didn't develop enough, let's say also kind of programs, even common programs among Catholic universities, that could provide us the tools how to do it on a cultural background, in a cultural way, scientific, psychological, spiritual way. That's something that I think is very important. Second, especially what we feel is a problem in Croatia is education of educators. Our students were born after the communist time, but most of our professors were born in the communist time, myself too. And we were educated at universities also partly in the communist time. Especially those who studied humanities, social sciences, what Professor Banac was telling yesterday. You know what, their professors were Marxists mostly. We saw in pedagogy, in psychology, in other fields of science. For us, it's a big challenge here at Catholic University in Croatia, how to educate the educators. Because they spent most time with students. More than myself as a priest, as a rector, because they are every day in touch with them. They are every week in touch with them. And if they don't have certain values, Catholic, Christian, but also this understanding what was going on in the communist time, I think we are not going to succeed. And we have to think a lot about education of educators. That's one point that we are also somehow, we are striving to see how to do it, and we are missing this point. We see that because when I talk sometimes to my professors, and I saw they're coming from the Faculty of Humanities at state universities, especially sometimes in history, I see sometimes that they're using the same terms, the same pathway that they were taught at this school. Somehow how to change that, or ideas, or to bring something new. Okay, I will conclude here. I think it's how to talk to the students about past, not just talking about the past, but to see how it affects our future, but not to keep them in the past, but to make them free to go, but not forgetting what was happening. And secondly, education of educators. Because we have to admit that most of our professors, I think there's the same situation in Croatia and Poland, were educated because we didn't have maybe like in Dublin this situation of having in the communist time Catholic universities. We had all these state very controlled universities, and what I said, most of our professors were educated in those 20 universities. We see that there also a challenge how to bring all these ideas together. We hope our hope future and hope is that now younger generations are coming from our university, that those are going to be our forces. But still, the question is what we should do in order to work with our professors in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. John Slavomir, for this opportunity that I'm able to be with us and share some my thoughts. I would emphasize 2 points, 2 consideration. The first one, more general consideration about the educational system and the problematic. And the second, I had some information about our university because, as I know, you know few information what about in Georgia, Catholic university. For many people it's strange how it's in Orthodox land. Well, the first one, many of us make the think what's the process is now, where we are going, our countries, what's the process and what the epoch we now will live. It's a big problem for me that we nowadays say some regress or concepts of freedom and liberty. For our European countries in the 90s years, it was time when we had the orientation. We wanted to Euro integration and some orientation point. But we today say that the future of the European Union, or not only on the European Union, generally the global situation in the world is very unsure. And especially in the academic situation, we see the global and paradigmal changes of education. We are used, and I was brought up in the time which we had absolutely other paradigm, which from 18th, 19th, 20th century where their knowledge was gathered in encyclopedial forms. But now we have another point, another attitude to educational. And this is also the reason why many of our countries have some problem to provide general conceptual program of educational reforms. I see in Georgia, I see in Slovakia, how I heard, and many of them, because all these processes are very reforms in our countries are mostly fragmentary, very not in paradigmal wholeness. And for us Catholics, this is so much problem that we see nowadays also the transfer of the crisis of transfer of values. How can I speak with my students about Christianity, about love, about truth, etc., etc. And even in my country, for example, is the question what kind of Christianity we should present. What does it mean to be true to tradition, and to be? This is a very big problems for us because our professors, which were lived in the communists and the Homo Sovieticus, come in us very strong. And Homo Sovieticus, we see that this life is alive nowadays too, but has some transformation, but in other forms. And what I said that at the beginning, this for me is a big problem. This is a regress of consciousness, of liberty, of freedom, of responsibility. Nobody speaks enough about this. And in the front of this is question how to be Catholic and how we bring new generation up to be real, authentic Christians. This is the question about only which I wanted to bring as an input for our discussion, because this is also for me a big problem. And the second, of course, the second point, the Catholic University in Georgia. Georgia is a traditional Orthodox country. Above 80% of inhabitants are Orthodox. And the Orthodoxy has had very, not all the religions in Soviet, especially in Georgia. We had above 70 years no religion life. We have a whole generation without any imagination or religion. And now we saw in the 90s boom of return to Christianity without any reflection, without any authentic understanding of Christianity. What is the Christianity? And in this situation, small Catholic, small community of Catholics, we are in Georgia about 40,000 of, about 1% of population, very ambitious, I would say. How or whether is it possible so small community make his sign in this society, really to be a little different, to be more as a beautiful example, a beautiful witness. Yes, 2002, our bishop, Giuseppe Pazzotto, a Catholic bishop, has founded a theological institute. This was a small theological institute, and we began, and we wanted to provide theological knowledge because it was absolutely no height for Georgia. Because Georgia, we had last time no theology. Also, understandable reasons. The Soviet time it was absolutely forbidden. And 2003 we began, and until 2009 we worked as a small theological institute with some seminars, conference, theological bachelor program. In 2010 we received we added new faculties of law, then business and master's programs of theology and law. So we became the Catholic, the university. We are not Catholic officially, because it's a ecumenical problem and we don't want to be some reason of problems. And now we have the university, but we see that we are born. We are young, and this is a small young child. And we began to work ourselves, but always this feeling that could be fall down is very big. And especially such of kind of meetings, sharing experience, bystand, solidarity, it's what's give me hope that besides that we are Catholics very small, we are not so small. The Catholic Church is strong, and we should step by step go through in the future. And through this witness, and this process is a very new and authentical, and in this struggle to survive or to create more suitable, sustainable structures, this is a life authentic process, and this is also some of kind of witness. And maybe I think for me not so much, not think too much, only work and go on. Okay, sorry, I finished because this is my first step in English. This is English, and I interrupt here.
That's terrific. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me, especially because during last 10 years, after I retired from my position as a founder of Kyiv-Mohyla Akademia and rector president, and I decided that younger people had to be on these positions, and I will have them. And so I tried every time that president or vice presidents or deans went to such conference, not me. So I have enough responsibility in university, and I have work. We are to some extent exception in this. We are not Catholic university, but we are working together and very close with Ukrainian Catholic University. From the very beginning, they appeared in Ukraine, and with the rector Bogdan Gudziak, with other rectors, and we know them, we support them, we even sometimes we break law to support them, and I understood that I maybe have some responsibility, but we understood that this is new and very, very important kind of university in Ukraine. It's interesting that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in such conferences, we discussed the same thing, and I think, is there any changes? But changes is big change in our mentality, in our new generation, and every time when I'm asked about this in Ukraine or somewhere, I answered, look back for 3 decades, for 25 years, and you understand that we live in another country, in another world. But we want result. want to see that communists died, not get away. But the life is not the result. Life is the process, and life of universities or education too, or life of new generations, appearance of new generations. Ukraine is known about these two famous revolutions, Orange Revolution and Revolution of Dignity. But there were three revolutions, such kind, in the same place, in Maidan. And the first one is unknown mostly, even in Ukraine, we've forgotten about this. But it was in the Soviet time, in 1990. This is a student revolution on granite, so-called. And it is interesting, I'll try if I have time to show the changes in all these three revolutions. The first one, students protested against government, parliament, and so on. And people supported them very strongly. But when people came to these young people, young students asked them, change this country. We don't want to live in this country. We need another country. Okay, next revolution, Orange Revolution. Students were the main movement in this revolution. And when people come to support these young students, now people ask students, change this country. Change. We don't want you have to change it. So there was, another approach to the problem. And Revolution of Dignity, young people didn't ask, and nobody asked them. All understood that these people changing this world. So this process is very interesting and very hopeful. I know, for example, for my university, we began in 1992, 1995, 1991, 1992, and there was a problem. You told about this. All professors, including me, we lived in Soviet Union, and we lived, even comparing with Hungary, not in the nearest barrack of the socialist camp, and comparing with Poland, we have not paid or unpaid vacations for professors. They were expelled, they were sent into camps, they were died, they were killed, like such prominent people like Valery Marchenko or Vasil Stus. They were killed in 80s, in 90s even. So we tried to find appropriate people. It was the most difficult problem was to find these people. And now, among faculty of Kyiv-Mohyla Akademia, more than 100 our former students or graduates from other universities. There is another generation, completely another generation. But the problem was after the revolution on granite, the first student revolution, I have on radio some program with 2 participants of this revolution at that time. Very interesting young students. But after our program, I asked them, you are students, you are very active politically, but when you are studying, you have no time for this. And their answer was, first, we have to build an independent state because it was in the Soviet Union, and then we will study. And this was the last reason for me to to try to organize, to rebirth this university, because it is very old university. 400 years ago it was established, but it was closed by Soviet authorities, and instead of this, like this campus, by the way, because there used to be the military school, and we lived in such circumstances to some extent. So in Ukraine, there is one problem which may be non-understandable for all of this, even this audience. Ukraine, unique country, because this is the only country in the world, I suppose, especially in Europe, where teaching in the universities, mostly, even today, provided by foreign language, Russian. During several decades, several centuries, Russia tried to destroy national identity of Ukrainians, and mostly from forbidden language. And this is, can you imagine in Poland or in Hungary that professor teach students in Russian or Italian, or it doesn't matter. In Ukraine, this is a problem. Very interesting, very serious problem. And even not only in Kyiv or Donetsk, even in Lviv, very large city, but when I come to this city today, I see that Russification is not gone away on the street of this city. So this is a problem, and the problem is that language aspect is explored by Putin and his allies in this war. And they explored this, that Russian language would be forbidden and so on. There's no problem with this. Problem is that we need to return for national identity as a normal country. And after this language, behind this language speculations, are much more serious aspect of our life. There was one article in Russian media about Ukraine, about languages problem, and about Kyiv-Mohyla Akademia. And I will cite the abstract from this article to show that language, this is camouflage. The main problem not in language. When a nearest Russian chauvinism immediately detected the danger which was arising in the 21st century from the restored spiritual sanctity of Ukrainian people, Kyiv-Mohyla Akademia, one famous ideologist literally screamed, appealing to Putin's regime for advice how neutralize the influence of Kyiv-Mohyla Akademia on the young generations of Ukrainians. He especially worried about the fact that there are two languages of instruction at the university. Although it is usual for Russian nationalists to disguise real interest with the language problem. In particular, this street cry for the Russian World Road, this is, I cited. High quality English language teaching essentially allows for doing without Russian cultural forms. And this, in its turn, can guide the development of all the leading scientific disciplines away from the post-Soviet academic mainstream. Post-Soviet academic mainstream is the main stress in this article. Instead, directing them into modern Western intellectual streams. You understand what is the difference between language problem and intellectual streams. It is clear what is really frightening for theoretical and practical proponent of the Russian language in Ukraine, where nothing endangered it and moreover where it is aggressively dominates. It is essence as a frightens modern Western intellectual streams. So this is very important part of our base of our national life in Ukraine, the modern Western intellectual and spiritual, it includes spiritual values which were destroyed for this long time of being in the Russian Empire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter.
Oh, my turn. First, thank you very much for invitation, organizing this conference, because it's first type of conference like this for me, and I'm very pleased, very happy I'm here, and you showing not only with the high quality of panel and discussions and people here, but even generosity of your lunch was unbelievable. I've been around with royalty and presidents and at the same level, nothing lower. So these cravats, they know how to be a generous host. And so I really appreciate same thing for a gym. And I was wondering how beautiful, how wonderful, how blessed we are that we can have somebody like Notre Dame and Nanovic Institute, somebody to look up to. I grew up, I have to tell something, I brought my book here and two books. One I wrote, it was just incredible success. There is a whatever jersey and there is a 3 picture. I'm the unique guy who played for 3 countries, even though it's not allowed, but for some reason it was allowed. I played for Czechoslovakia, Slovakia, and Canada. And my sons, 2 of them play at the World Championship for USA, so my immediate family played for 4 countries. So I really accomplished a lot. And and everything was somehow connected with our faith. I grew up in communist. Whenever it was taught here, I lived through it. I was born in communist country. I experienced the communist education all the way through university and never wanted to leave, but I left because they were threatening me and they were threatening my greatest passion, greatest love, which was hockey and playing for my country. And they said, hey, you won't listen, you will not play for Czechoslovakia. It was like somebody was, you know, if you kill me, it's easier than you taking away my passion. And at the time I was old enough, I was freshly married, and I was old enough to understand that we need to, you know, I need to provide, I'm not responsible for myself, but also for my family. My wife was already at a 6-month pregnancy, and when that happened, I realized, no, there is no place for me here. I need to move on just to give my children the opportunity, chance, freedom, not being brainwashed and not growing up as a hypocrite, because we were taught in the school all this nonsense, this Marx-Leninistic ideology was brainwashed left and right, and people of the faith were laughed at and making fun of, and they were basically outcast. They had no chance, they had no future, no career. And you know, I don't think I would be happy just doing a simple job. I got ambitions, so does my family, so do my children. And I wanted for them to really grow up and have the opportunity to become themselves, to make their own choices. And you know, I was one of those who actually was one of the last one who took some Catholic education at the elementary school. Then it was completely eliminated, because we had some discussions here how they were attacking and destroying the Catholic Church from the top. But it will also work from the bottom, where they threatened the parents. And they had people in the churches watching and making notes who they see there. And once you get on the list, your career is over. You won't get to the university, you won't get a good job, you won't get a promotion, you're basically done. And I realized, okay, I was always very proud, practicing Catholic every week, every like holy day, I was in the church. I didn't mind. I knew they need me. They could do nothing. We were doing pretty well in what we did. But it couldn't last forever. And eventually I would be done with what I do. And I would end up in a lot of troubles. And not only me, but my family. So somehow, through the influence of the providence of the Almighty, all these conflicts came up without ever planning them. And you know, I ended up defecting Czechoslovakia. I just mentioned I was sentenced to 2 years in prison because I was the conspirator. My wife received only 18 months. That was unconditionally. You know, you show up in Czechoslovakia, you go to prison. And but it was all worth it, because you know, when we roll back, I don't know, 30 years, it was 1980, we left. Meanwhile, I met my family once in Hungary, once in Pula on the Adriatic coast of Croatia, because I couldn't go to Czechoslovakia or to Slovakia before it was open, before all, you know, the communism and the Velvet Revolution passed through. And I'm basically very, very grateful to what happened to me, because now, 30 plus years, I'm seeing the fruit, you know, in my own children, because I want for them education, I want for them their choices, I want for them competition, because I know what the competition can produce. I'm the product of competition. And you know, we did very, very well, me and my brothers. And you know, one thing I forgot to mention was that I always looked up, with all the success I had, just as a player, later as a manager. You know, collecting, I don't know, for a small country, this is unprecedented, because I got 3 world championships. Nobody has more in Slovakia. 2 as a player, 1 as a general manager for Slovakia. We got other medals, other titles and accomplishment. But I always looked up to the elderly, to the experienced, to accomplished people, people with results. And I wonder, I mean, what a wonderful thing, and I'm glad I can help chip in a little bit, whatever it takes, to have Notre Dame as a patron, as a somebody, as a benefactor who is looking over and is there ready to help any way they can to bring back again the certain values. Because those values disappear after the World War II, and with those values, a lot of other stuff disappeared. And we're going to struggle for a long, long time before things really get back to normal. I can see, because I live basically half a life in Slovakia, half of my life in North America, 10 years in Canada, and the rest in the United States. And I want nothing for my children, and now I'm thinking for my grandchildren, because I got 5 grandchildren. 6th one is on its way by Tuesday, so this weekend or maybe Tuesday latest, and 7th one will come in November. I got 4 happily married children. They got fun, wonderful spouses. So I just, you looking at the happiest dude, the happiest person and most blessed person in the world. By the way, my patron was Don Bosco. As a kid, I read his books because mom's sister, my aunt, served in his order in Montebelluna in Italy. Poor girl, she left after the war. She could, because of a communism, she couldn't get back. So I remember when I took my mom, she didn't see her for 30 years. I took her first time in 77. Drove her, and it was so wonderful. And she was our kind of a patron, and she prayed for us, and she introduced us to Don Bosco. And he was a saint of the athletes, of the sportsmen. Through the sport, he brought people to the faith. So there is many, many ways. I keep saying there is many ways to climb the Mount Everest. You can get there if you want to. And so it is truly wonderful that now everything is working so well. And I forgot to mention, many people know that I got 2 actually one graduate, one veteran of veteran alma mater from Notre Dame. My son went there. He quit. He didn't quit. He quit because he wanted to play hockey, and hockey needs the time, and he won't be there. School will be there, so he can come back hopefully. But my daughter graduated from Notre Dame, so I'm very, very proud parent, and I know what such a university can do. All of you probably know, most of you know, but when I got to know, I live in North America, as I said, 25, 30 years, and every time I wanted the best education for my children. And I can tell you, in Quebec, my first 10 years, when my children were born, first 2 older ones were going to the Catholic school, private school, all girls, all boys. That's what I wanted. When I moved to States, they continued. When I moved to St. Louis, they were going to high school. They got private high school, like Catholic high school, all girls, all boys. And 2 of them continued at Notre Dame. One went to George Washington by the White House, and the other one went to, mostly for a sport. The other one went to the University of Denver. But the education is crucial. Education is a key to just every problem. It's a solution to everything, but not education by itself. You need to have education with a moral and ethical kind of dimension plus. And that's what I think Catholic universities, Catholic education provides, because I can tell you, I could talk about my experiences. I wrote this book, and nobody ever, in Czechoslovakia, any athlete, no matter how famous, when they wrote the book, nobody sold more than 2,500, 3,000 pieces. I wrote this book, and I put, 30,000, in 5-10 years I'll give it away. In matter of 1 week, 6-7 days, there was nothing. I never seen anything like it. There were like 100 or 1,000 people lines when I made the tour. 6 days, 12 cities. 2 cities, morning, afternoon. 3 hours every time. 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, or late. We needed to move. I was so sore like never. I was signing, like there was not break, it was line. So it really shows that everything I've done, I was simply blessed, and you know, just wanted to mention about my wife when she was telling me like how children in Slovakia, they're already learning this and that, and they're so far ahead. I'm glad I heard my colleague from Ružomberok speaking that Slovakia has the worst 15 years old in this test, because we just have a talk and not enough work, not enough focus, and just Slovakia is in shambles, speaking of education. And that probably reflects those 18 ministers in 22 or 25 years. Everybody keeps promising, and everything what they do well is corrupt and steal. That's what they do. And the youth, the country, and society is on the back burner, and paying heavy price. And that's why I think that even this symposium and the conferences like this, and people like you, all of you, and I put myself right in there, I would do anything, because I told many people many times, you're looking at the happiest man on the planet. My only wrinkles are from Slovakia, and from the leftover what we have there, from the communists. And I think, and I don't think, I'm sure, and again, it keeps proving me that you invest properly, you stand firmly on your values, you'll be rewarded. You will live full, happy, meaningful life. I pray. I need to mention this little thing here. If you open this book, there is actually very front hymnus na lásku. That's a hymn of love from St. Paul in the letter of Corinthians. Often young people listen to it during the wedding ceremonies. Somehow I read about it in one communist book somewhere. I was young, I was reading like crazy. And even they admitted, if communists admit, if communist writers admit, this is one of the most beautiful verses ever written about love. So I kept into it, I kept reading it, and you read it many times, and then I just came with the conclusion, if I ever get a 60-70%, I was pretty greedy, not 50, 60-70% of what's written here, like, that was my goal. And I can tell you, calmly, honestly, I got at least 90%. I got beautiful family. I accomplished so much in the sport, in the politics, everywhere. But my biggest accomplishment is my family, my wife, my children. And it's mostly because of the prayer of the others. I'm the witness of the power of prayer. I received so many letters, tens of thousands. And then when I was in Quebec, we left our brother in communist Czechoslovakia. So many people pray for him, and within a few months he was there. Nothing, and we planned all kind of difficult plan. How many people escaped, how many people were shot, and I was fully aware. So I was very careful. They tried to bring the chopper, and I said no, because these crazy guys, they're going to shoot it down. And all kind of plan, and we and somehow money worked. So there was a lot of tens of thousands of dollars, and somehow he got his way out, and that was again, everything I dream of, everything my prayer were focused to, everything came true, and I cannot ever ask for anything more except spread this and help young children, young people, just like my children, which are basically now done, and I'm praying for their families and for my grandchildren. As I said, there'll be 7 of them by November. And I want best education possible. So I really believe and I hope, this is like a new seed. You got great patron, great supporter in Notre Dame, which by itself, I remember talking to American family and doing all kinds of studies, they always pop out. You look in the last 50, 100 years or 30 years, you look at the best school in North America, the best school in the world, they always are right there. Maybe East Coast, these Ivy schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, but you go Notre Dame and you got Stanford, and plus some other school, but Notre Dame is always there. And you know, I'm so happy that, you know, when I'm there and I'm seeing on those campuses and participating a lot of people from this participating Catholic school in the Eastern Europe countries. So I hope this friendship and this collaboration will continue, and there'll be like many fruits brought. We need new leaders. We need leaders, somebody who is completely untouched with the past, because that's the past. No matter I do, I can still feel it and sense it, because I just hated them with a passion. But when you're part of something, like it or not, you will pick up many things. And believe me, I left, I was 24 years old, minus about, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And I still feel and I recognize a lot of baggage coming from the influence of the Marx-Leninist ideology, and hope that things will never ever return. I'm very blessed, very lucky that we live further away from Moscow, because I feel honestly sorry. I admire a lot the Georgian. I personally meet with his past president, his wife. I know a lot of people, we got our people. Now my very good friends work as a personal advisor to Ukrainian government, Zurinda and Ivan Mikloš. You know, very close, because we did something very special in Slovakia. It was unbelievable. We just were one of the worst. We became the leading, the best tiger economy of European Union. Fastest growing, like 9, 10, 12. Last year was like 13% in 4 or 5 years in a row. And we move ahead of many countries that we usually were ahead of us. So we have something to bring to the table and to advise. And as much as I mentioned here, we were helping very much Croatia, including me, to become a member of the European Union. We definitely know what it is to live under oppressive regimes. And that's why Georgia or Ukraine or any other Baltic countries and anybody who feels threatened will always find in me, and they always did in European Parliament and even outside, you know, very good friend and supporter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. So, Ivo.
Thank you very much. Professor Briukhovetsky said that discussion here is rather like such discussions 10 years ago. I really don't know what was happening 10 years ago, because this is the first conference of this sort for me, and for that I'm especially grateful to Rector Tanjić, because strictly between us, when he invited me, I did not expect anything special or yet another conference. It turned out not to be yet another conference. It turned out to be really quite exciting. For one, I think, fundamental reason, the intelligentsias in this part of the world tend to know a great deal more about what is going on in Paris or in London or in Berlin or in Rome than in the part of the world that we share. What is going on in Bratislava, Budapest, in Warsaw, in Lviv, and so on and so on. I think it's terribly important for us to exchange knowledge of one another and to join the initiatives that we share and which are very similar in most of these countries. We do not come from the same, with the same history. Histories are different, but there are two things that we very much share at this particular point. One of them is, of course, the heritage of communism. We have buried it, but not quite, because its dead hand is still around, and it transmits its influence in various ways, ways that are expectant and ways that are sometimes entirely surprising. And indeed, the best way to deal with this is through education. There is no question about that. The other aspect which we share is that we do come from a somewhat more traditional part of Europe. I think that many of us are not very pleased with the aggressive secularism that is, I think, very much on the rampage in Western Europe and is coming our way. I think that that is something that we need to concern ourselves with, and to that effect, anything that we can do to cooperate, I think, is of tremendous importance. The idea within the European Union, because most of the universities here come from the countries of the European Union, that that particular body will be developing in different speeds is, I think, very dangerous. This is something that I think we need to unite in rejecting. We do want European unity, but not at the expense of many things that we consider to be very important and perhaps they're not fully appreciated in other corners. So, to sum up, I think that this was an extremely valuable experience. I think that the knowledge of one another that was shared here was extremely useful. And I trust that there is going to be another one, not in 10 years, but sooner. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivo. So we have time for questions. Who would like to go first? So.
I would like to add one remark to what to what Vaja told us. Being a Catholic university in an almost totally Orthodox land, perhaps your role is similar to the role of the universities, Catholic universities in places like Japan or Taiwan. They are Catholic universities, been doing very well for many years, living, operating in a totally unchristian world, as we well know. We should perhaps, as Catholics, and you too as well, as rector, remember about the evangelical parable of the mustard seed, which is very, very tiny, but will one day grow into a very big tree. So that's hopeful, I guess. That's hope, yes, for you. Now, I would like to ask two questions to Professor Banac. It was not only in the 60s and 70s, but I guess even now, from time to time, you can read that campuses, university campuses in the West, in America, Western Europe, particularly perhaps in America, are still more or less Marxist in their mentality. Would you agree and say yes, or perhaps until some extent, or perhaps now? And the second question, just one more word. You have a lot of experience for many years with American youth, American young people. Do they have hope, any hope in their lives? Where do they place their hope, if they have one? Thank you.
The second question is more difficult, and I'm not quite certain that I will be able to answer it. The first one is somewhat less difficult. First of all, precisely because many of us had issues with Marxism, I think that we ought to respect it as a serious enemy. So many things that describe themselves as Marxist are really not. They are pale imitations, although they share a certain common perspective. I would say that these tendencies were far stronger in the 1960s than they are today. But that is not necessarily something that can come as comfort, because many ideas that come through particular Marxist strains, particularly through Gramscianism and so on, have become the motors of a number of social sciences. And this is the struggle that is being waged in the social sciences in the United States. And by the way, that was the meaning of my question to you earlier this morning when I was trying to find out whether this was an issue in post-communist Poland as well, basically state universities. So what has happened in a very peculiar and ironical way is that Marxism in the United States, I would say in the West generally, perhaps more so in the United States, has no rooting whatsoever in the proletariat. The working class, no influence of Marxism. And the only place where it actually has influence, but in this diluted way, through these various secondary tendencies, is precisely in academia. We have tenured revolutionaries in many places, and this does have an influence on young people, so that elements of utopian thinking have been transferred to them. But I think even more dangerously, there is a significant number, whether it's a majority, it's difficult to say, that really has no preferences whatsoever. They are entirely career-oriented and really do not take into account any number of these issues that are obviously troubling us. What is the political consequence of a generation like that, or several generations like that? I suspect not very good. The question is how to counter that. The answer is not obvious, but perhaps part of the answer is to be found in what we have been discussing. There is a tendency for certain trends to be initiated in the West and then to be picked up on this side, let us say, after 30 years. So what I'm describing here is going to come. Perhaps it's already here. So we should be aware of that and prepare accordingly.
Yeah.
I have a question for Peter Stasny. There is some kind of internal conference joke that said that we are talking about hope, but anyway, more or less, all concludes that there is not so much hope. I think that you give us this hope in your lecture, little lecture. Yeah. My question is following. You are the one of people who, in whose life this system is evident, and I think that there is, on personal level of yours, some kind of process to deal with these people who maybe is in your country, maybe you see them, and who impact personally on your life, because it's horrific to leave your country, that especially if you don't want to leave it. Yeah. How you manage with, how you deal with this feeling, I think, of reconciliation, of maybe of, yeah. This is my question.
Wow, thank you very much, because you really hit the right string. What a dilemma, because what bothers me, because I come here, I feel like in the family. I come when I used to be like EPP is the largest European political group, even in the parliament, and generally it's a center-right. I feel like in the family. But when I'm in Slovakia, I'm walking the street, I have no problem. People come across and they stop me, but you know what they tell me? Oh, we respect you, you're so right, we respect you, but this is a fight against windmills, you know, like they all know, but there is still fear. And what bothers me about what I left, and people I knew, what bothers me, people who are high in the career, are spineless people, just bad people who wouldn't look you in the eye. That's the problem. You know, we have at the leadership post, and most important post, like a spineless person, and most of it. And that's a product of communism, where everybody, if you have a read book, some people find excuse. Even my father was a communist, but he was such a communist. He wanted to protect family. He went to church every Sunday. Some people say because of whatever career they need to be communist. I don't mind, but there are certain people who got to the Communist Party just to further their career, and they're incompetent, they're dangerous, and they did so much distraction everywhere, and mostly at the moral level. And it's still there because these people are still organized. I openly speaking about organized crime, running the country, and they consist of former apparatchik, KGB people, and nomenclature of communist party. And many of them I know because I was very, very well known, and I was being promoted left and right. I think I refused 3 times. I kept looking for excuses how not to enter because but I knew people who would beg, who would kill to become the member of Communist Party because they knew this is their way to a good career. And I then, and even now, I openly detest is very mild word. I hate these people. I have zero respect because they have, you know, as I said, they have no spine, and usually they're incompetent. And these people are still at the majority, at the, I mean, crucial position of the apparatus of the country. Then these are the result. There is still too much intimidation. People who openly speak up, all of a sudden they are jobless and they have families. And it's being done the same pattern, same kind of style, except little different methods or instruments. I remember just very recently one guy died. Can you imagine? In 50s, Czechoslovakia, it was like first or second time in the history of the world, they won the world championship. They were world champion. They locked up whole national team. 3 of them, or 2 or 3 received death sentence. Many of them, including my coach, who later got amnesty in the early 60s. You know, when the Godfather, when all these, you know, when Stalin died, there were changes. Many of them were sentenced to 20, 25, 30, 35. They didn't serve, I'm not talking years, not a month. It was just crazy. And they didn't care, they are heroes. This is even stronger message to the population. And they're still using the same methods. And it bothers me, and I feel like helpless. And they kind of quietly laugh. They still afraid to look me in the eye. They're going to run away. They wouldn't meet me. I challenged them many. They kept promising openly, open forum, television. They never came up to the public discussion, debate. They would always find excuse. Now I cannot get to Slovak television, Slovak radio because journalists are being threatened. You're losing their job if I get to the studio. So, you know, I really ended up like absolutely persona non grata. In the democratic Slovakia, where I served 10 years as a member of European Parliament. I mean, there is so many paradoxes there. But again, you know, these are the people, they bother me, who I knew they got nothing, no chance, except through the career, through the red booklet of membership in Communist Party.
Next question, Anthony.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question about globalization. So I was born in 1966 in the United States, and I always knew that I would leave my hometown and move away. And all of my friends were the same opinion. The freshmen at our university were born in 1999, and they come from all over the United States, and they too will probably leave South Bend and go scatter across the United States. I suspect that many of your students are looking not just at Slovakia, not just at Croatia, not only at Ukraine, but now with the Schengen area, they can move all over the world now, and young people are on the move quite a bit. How do you think about that in connection with your thoughts about the Catholic University here? Is that a running away? Is it a running towards? Does it present a new challenge for you?
Can I try to give maybe first, I hope, short answer, and then maybe somebody else can add some. I would say so. In Croatia, I will talk about Croatia. We have really one of our biggest problem now is demographic shift. We are losing population so fast that you cannot imagine. There are many different reasons. I'm not going to talk about reasons, but now we lose every year like 1/6 city, 70, 80,000 people, which is Croatia is small, 4.5 million people, and our demographers are saying that in 20, 30 years we are going to be below 4 million, and we are dropping really fast. Entire families are leaving Croatia with kids. Every school year at the beginning we have entire classes empty, schools. That's not that I'm talking something about theoretically, it's our reality. Young people who are leaving for Germany, for Austria, for seeking jobs. Unemployment rate in Croatia, young people is 17%. So, okay, I would say there are two aspects. One aspect is somebody is looking, because this is lifestyle, to go and to explore and to live whenever he wants to go. He has abilities and possibilities. And I think one other point is the societies, like Croatian societies, are able to keep the best people. Romania, that's, I would say there are two different points, and I would like not to mix up that. I would say it's a different situation maybe in States than in Croatia and some other countries. Because I know so many young people who say, I would like to stay in Croatia. That's my country. And really, there are so many things, sun, sea, mountains, good maybe perspective of life in many other ways. But I don't have a job, I don't have perspective, I cannot, if I don't have recommendation, even though I have so many qualities, I cannot succeed in the society. And how I'm going to feed my family and so on. That is not only an economical issue, it's really a spiritual and a social issue. But in any case, I would say that's the difference. We are now facing the problem that young people are massively leaving Croatia. And that's somehow bringing Croatian society in danger to break down from inside. Because I said in one interview, we have the same situation like in the 70s. And the people, Tito, that was nice because he opened the border. But you have to know, that was politically, Professor Banac knows better than me. First, he got rid of political enemies. That was very clever. Secondly, he knew that somebody is going to stay in Yugoslavia and Croatia and they are going to bring money. Because Yugoslavia was financed with a lot of money came from abroad because they sent money. Because part of family was there. And many other issues. But now we have the same situation that the kids of those who emigrated in the 60s and 70s, many came back there, going once again abroad, and the people who stay there here as a part of elites, the children mostly, they go to study abroad, they have money, but they come back because they know that they will get positions. So I would say that's one part of the aspect. I agree, especially European Union, to make experiences, to go. For example, we try, and I'm always pleased we have some assistant professors, so some students now Erasmus and other tools that we have that we need to exchange our students, to know each other, to go to different universities, even to make some work experience, but in the hope that they're coming back, helping us to build a better society. Because the problem is that we don't have enough resources to renew Croatian society. And that's now, we are one really old society. And that's, for example, one of the problems that we face here in Croatia, regarding maybe this issue of organization. So I would say two aspects. Other point is if somebody is deciding from several reasons to go there. But other point that somebody is practically, he's not forced from outsiders, no maybe like in communist time, but he's forced by other social issues, and he goes.
Thank you. Yes.
It's working, don't worry.
I've got this this kind of a question. We are coming from different countries in this region, and we are kind of sharing the same communist past, which is still kind of pretty much vital, as it seems after 2 days of our discussion. And we this is our language. I mean, we communicate, we understand one another. That's at least my experience. By hearing all those kind of stories from colleagues from different countries, I kind of easily understand, because I mean, this is pretty much the same experience I had, or we had in Ukraine. So there is a language we understand. I'm just kind of wondering about the students that we educate and teach. What would you think about them? What's kind of their language that they communicate? What do you think, what we want them to kind of shape, and how we want them to shape and build, and what's kind of communicating platform we think they should have, or they build and develop? How would you kind of respond to this? I think that we certainly want to move beyond that kind of post-communism shared experience and language and everything. However, nicely and easily we might be kind of communicating and understanding ourselves, but this is probably not the end. I mean, there's got to be a new language, new reality, and I guess I would expect that universities are pretty much behind that process of kind of shaping, building, designing, developing, helping to articulate that kind of new modality of communication for the students that we have. And how would you respond to this? Thank you.
May I try? Yes. By curious coincidence, during the past several years, I was teaching at the State University of Zagreb. So also I taught one course here, same course, History of Yugoslavia. It's, I think, a quiet generation. There is a timidity generally, and not all that great interest and engagement in discussion. So the only difference that I can see is that there is a more, how should we say, more interest in very specific controversial political subjects dealing with Yugoslav history, royalists and communists. That comes from students in this Catholic university, because I think this comes through the families. I don't imagine there is any other way. Whereas at state universities, where of course the student population is more mixed, you can hear, not very loudly, but you can hear occasionally the subtext of apologia for certain aspects of art history. It's not very aggressive, it's not very loud, but it's there, I feel it. Which I think, again, strengthens the point we have made in various combinations here. And I imagine, just a guess, that what I'm talking about is probably far more obvious in the Ukrainian setting. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yes,
thank you. My question is, if we can consider, because we are talking these 2 days about identity and values, and my question is, if we may consider these two words as a synonymous, or we can talk also about identity versus values, and I will explain what I mean. If we put too much stress on the word identity, maybe it might direct towards isolation. I mean, sometimes we are talking about national identity, Slovak identity, Croatian identity, Hungarian identity. And maybe it's better to talk about common values, which are common to different countries, to different nationalities, but they are common because of values we profess. So my question is, if we may consider synonymous in a certain way, or even opposite, one and another. What is your opinion?
We have different understanding of notion of identity. In the philosophy, we have also the anthropology, there's some discussion, what is my identity? and it depends of the structural understanding of this notion. This notion identity as a closed, as a finished or some statical notion, or some open, always of the freedom and the liberty orientated possibilities. The first one. The second, what is the value? Some definition of this notion. If we define value as a possible, as a universalization, some of sense of life, or sense of situation, or sense of person, we can, these two notions, value and identity, see, or not synonym, but in the same direction, also on the opposite direction. So I want to say it depends on our understanding of these both notions. And it's us, for Christian, it's very important to promote the more often understanding of identity, which doesn't mean some isolation or some ended process or some static attitude. Because identity, it is not something in the beginning brought some notion, but identity is a new possibility for finding the sense of life or sense of person, of some life and some values. It depends on the understanding of these values. This problem, and so this in philosophical and sociological discuss is this. We have this problem.
You were very polite in your question, but we all know that you're talking about nationalism, right? I mean, that's what we are talking about. Okay, so let's be open about it and say that, of course, it can be a great problem. As an ideology which is very destructive in certain of its forms, it really presents a problem. On the other hand, national identity cannot be considered some sort of a social danger, which was certainly the case under communism, and is certainly the case in certain of our current political sects that cannot always articulate their program completely, but exist under the surface and occasionally pop up. I just wrote an article on that question yesterday. So this is something that I think we need to put in various perspectives. Never allow national identity to become politicized to the point that it is exclusivist and hostile to others, but also not allow people to say that by identifying with a nation that you are in itself somehow the political problem and so on.
If I may add something. Yeah. Also, what sometimes I'm discussing with my vice rector, we say always, you know what, mafia has also values. It seems to be somehow funny to say that, but they have like also mafia values. You know what, it's like values and identity, you know what, you can use it both in a positive or negative way. And so we have to say maybe Christian values, also the question of Christian identity. So I would say they're somehow going together, in my opinion. They must not go or play once again other. And I would say always, also like theologian, I say that, for example, talking about identity and values, is the church itself is organized locally and universally. Sometimes it seems to me to see also, I don't know how to translate that in some political categories and political sciences, but I taught ecclesiology, and I was always finding it's fun to think the Catholic Church is at the same time local and universal, not before and after. At the same time, every diocese is fully the church, and every diocese is fully the universal church. Somehow I think that way about national identity. It's not abstract universality, like not even such a close national identity. But you cannot, in my opinion, you cannot get one without another. That's something that, in my perspective, is playing an important role.
Just very short remark, just very short brief. My point or my understanding is that mafia have no value. There are rules they follow, but not values they follow. Certain rules you have to obey if you want to be a part of, but not values. But it's just short. Yes.
Okay, so
only small comment. I think that maybe the concept of identity in general is connected with the question who we are and concept of values, what we have to do, how we act. Yes, and I agree that with the identity is still the risk that we will be closed. So this is the risk, and we have to do everything to be open and to have real identity.
thank you. So Boguslav, for the last question.
Okay, we are Catholic universities, and national identity and national values are part of our Catholic identity, and we should talk and think more about Catholic values and Catholic identity, because if we have good Catholic formation, there is no danger of nationalism. But still, the question is how to inform, but at the same time, how to form this Catholic identity at our universities. I think this is, if we talk about the hope in the future, is the question how to improve our Catholic identity.
Do you want to comment on that?
Very clear. God comes to us not in abstract. Maybe we should give the witness. We should bring the young people up to awake as much as the responsibility. And the responsibility which is come not from out that you should do other, but existential responsibility. What means to be more deep in conscience of our freedom and liberty. And because if my trust can't be convenient to other, it can't be universal. And my trust and my belief is universal because not it's I'm Paul, Georgian, Russia, or because it comes from God. We don't explore something, but all gift is us given, and we have to give the witness that every day, all life is us done, given. So maybe and conform to every daily situation, to conform every problem, and more existential responsibility.
Thank you. I think I will make a couple of quick comments that perhaps will fit into the panel discussion. We've talked many times at this conference, but over the past 12 years of our meetings, 12 or 13 years, about the challenges of spirituality among our students in East Central Europe. It's also important to recognize that there is a kind of spiritual poverty among students in the United States, driven by different factors, but which is very relevant to us as teachers and for them as young individuals. Our students don't have the experience of economic challenges, of unemployment in, Notre Dame students or elsewhere where I've taught. They don't have the legacy of communism. And in a kind of perverse way, this is a burden for them, because they don't know what they're struggling for or struggling against. All they know is that from the time they're very young, they're raised to be extremely successful, and they're always the best. They're constantly performing. They have to take important tests to get into the best universities, which means then that they have classes to prepare them for those tests. They pay for private lessons for those tests, and this is their experience as young people. And so this provides for a kind of spiritual poverty, which means that they're tempted by other beliefs, other ways of looking at life that are in many ways, in many respects, corrupting. Secondly, to Slavomir's question about Marxism, and certainly there are Marxist ways of thinking in the American Academy.
In California.
In California?
Absolutely.
Well, I went to Berkeley, So, but I don't think this is the greatest challenge. I'm a social scientist, of a kind of a social scientist from a political science department. And especially in the social sciences in the United States, there is a poverty of values, because great scholarship is judged upon standards that have nothing whatsoever to do with the value of the human person, with human integrity. They have everything to do with writing refereed articles for major journals so that you can collect lots of citations about work that is in many cases absolutely trivial, because it isn't about what really counts in the world. So we too in the United States suffer from spiritual poverty, but of a different kind. And the irony is, when I've looked at the evolution of political science in the West, that at one point it was only the United States, and now when I look at Western Europe, the West Europeans have adopted the same kind of trivial questions and research agendas, and maybe then that is also slowly moving into Eastern Europe. So that's a wonderful thing about our conference, and also our many, many, many meetings over these years, that we are trying to think again about the point of educating young people, and think hard about what we want to convey to them. And as all of you do in your more impressive universities than ours, think about how to create the kinds of societies that will represent goodness, human purpose, morality. This is a noble agenda. So thank you to all of our panelists. Now I'm going to turn to Željko for the last word.
Thank you, Jim. I would like to thank Jim for organizing everything. And just a couple of announcements now, because I hope to see you, most of you, if not all of you, tonight in restaurant Dubravkin Food for a dinner at 7 p.m. Okay. And maybe Jim is going to say there's few words of before we go our homes. In meantime, there is a possibility organized by Zoran, who is doing with Susie and Dana and with Valentina, with all our staff, amazing things. They have organized also, once again, taxi to you, because we organize a sightseeing. It's not going anything be heavy, if I may say. Slowly to downtown, upper town, and finishing at the restaurant. Please join me. I will join you at 7 p.m. because I have a wedding now. In time I have to be I have to celebrate the wedding now. In the meantime, that's something that I promised you even before this conference. So now we have 3 hours. Celebrate 1 and 4. Taxis are going to be here at 4. A different place. We are going to Zvinjavac, downtown. Yes. It's downtown, and then we are going to go slowly to Cathedral and the other parts of the old city. So it's worth it to see. If you say we want to take a coffee, we want to take a break. But, sorry?
We arrange drink.
Yeah, drink. It's a bit of a drink. And you know what? Are you going to see Flora? Oh. I'm just surprised. Okay, in any case. Secondly, what I have to tell you, maybe you know that we had already this conference, and always is good, beautiful, but we will try to do something, let's say, to add a value to our conference in Zagreb. I don't know if I talked to Jim about that. We will like to publish the proceedings of this conference. It must not be completely scientifically managed, but we have introductory remarks of Professor Banac, and we would like to ask all of you of panelists to see and to visit your work and to present, and we are going to try to publish it in English so that we have, and then to send that we have something enhanced, or we are going to publish it maybe also printing. I think it's always good, or in an electronic way, sending you then for your web pages or for your personal. So we are going to organize that. So I would like to ask you to make somehow Zoran is going to contact you, and then we'll see. It must not be that you have to write completely scientific papers in a way, but your thoughts, your ideas, what you express here is exchange. We record our discussion. We will see how to manage also our discussion, maybe to put inside of part of it. So I think that's all now. Thank you to all of you, and see you at 7 p.m. That's going to be our arrivederci, not now. Thank you.